Today's election. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is urging people not to give Labour a supermajority amid polls giving Sir Keir Starmer a 20-point lead. But the Labour leader says a clear mandate is needed to repair Britain's economy and warns apathy could lead to another 5 years of the Conservatives. Shadow Paymaster General Jonathan Ashworth told GB News a vote for Labour is a vote for change.
There are lots of people who are still deciding. Lots of people still weighing up their options. But honestly, if you want to change this country, you've got to come out and vote Labour. Voting for any of the other parties helps Rishi Sunak get re-elected. So if you don't want to switch on GB News on Friday morning and hear that Rishi Sunak has been re-elected, if you don't want to wake up to that, vote Labour on Thursday.
Many within the Conservative Party are now attempting to persuade would-be Reform UK voters to think again. Home Secretary James Cleverly told GB News that voters have a clear choice to make.
Which of the two parties that can credibly form a government do you want to form a government? Do you want it to be the Conservative Party? We have a plan. We are determined to bring down immigration. Or Keir Starmer's Labour Party, which is led by a man who said that all immigration legislation was racist. The Labour Party has voted against stronger border controls over 130 times, voted to delay the Rwanda scheme, which is why it's not yet up and running. So that is the choice at this election.
Sir Ed Davey is urging voters to take the plunge and do something they've never done before by voting for the Liberal Democrats.
3, 2, 1, bungee!
The party's leader took part in a bungee jump as he urged voters to take a similar leap of faith when they head to the polls on Thursday. He thinks people who are disillusioned by the Conservatives should consider voting for his party.
Asking people to do something, many people do something they've never done before, which is vote Liberal Democrat this coming Thursday. We're finding a lot of lifelong Conservatives considering us. They don't want to vote Conservatives. Some young people who've never voted before, and we're saying, do something you've never done. I've just done it. I've never done that before. So take the plunge. Vote for health and care, which is our top priority, unlike anyone else's. Vote for a proper economic policy. Vote to end the sewage scandal and action on climate change. I think we've got policies that will attract people who were normally Conservative.
The populist right National Rally Party has taken more than 30% of the vote in France's elections, putting it on the cusp of forming government. The first round of voting is a huge setback for President Macron, whose centrist alliance trailed in third place with just 20%. If the current momentum continues, it could be the populist right rising to power for the first time since the Second World War. The final outcome will depend on days of negotiations between parties before next week's runoff vote, though many are now predicting a hung parliament. Energy prices will become cheaper from today as the latest price cap takes effect. The energy regulator Ofgem's cap fell by 7% after a drop in wholesale prices. It means that typical 12 monthly bills will be around £112 cheaper than they were a year ago, though another rise is expected in October. The average house price was up by 0.2% in June as higher mortgage rates keep many people out of the property market. It means the average cost of a home across the UK is just over £266,000, which is 1.5% more than last year. According to the index by Nationwide, earnings growth has performed better than the property market in recent years, but it hasn't been enough to offset the recent spike in mortgage costs. Job centre security guards have begun a week-long strike in an escalation over pay dispute. The GMB said around 1,500 of its members employed by G4S will walk out. The union says 90% of guards are paid just the minimum wage. British champion Emma Raducanu takes to centre court in Wimbledon later, where she's expected to face tough competition from her Russian opponent. The crown jewel of British tennis gets underway today with reigning men's champion Alcaraz looking to retain his title. And Andy Murray is expected to decide this evening whether or not he'll make a final singles appearance. The two-time former champion has been in a race against time since struggling with a back problem that led to surgery last week to remove a spinal cyst. Well, those are the latest GB News headlines. I'm Tamsin Roberts. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 8 minutes past 12.
I think we can go live now to some live pictures from the England training camp in Germany. I think the mood there today will be a little bit tense. We're panning now, can see Anthony Gordon leading that group of people running. But yeah, I think the mood will be quite tense after a very poor performance yesterday. Obviously, we spoke on Friday about how Slovakia was potentially quite an easy draw.
Oh, it was going to be a walkover, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then actually it really wasn't.
But Sophie, these are some of the best players in the world.
Yes, absolutely.
This is meant to be a stellar team to take England to its first international cup trophy since 1966.
Yeah.
Why is it not working?
I mean, I don't pretend to be an expert on football.
You are quite an expert on football.
Well, maybe between the two of us. I just don't know. I mean, obviously, England were pegged, like, they were favourites for this going into it. And now, when you compare it to the Spain-Georgia game, where Spain just absolutely shone, it was apples and oranges. And then you compare that to the England team, I think... We talked about the general election, Rishi Sunak potentially losing his job. I think it's more likely that England manager Gareth Southgate will be losing his job. Obviously, we've got Switzerland this weekend coming. I think the performance Switzerland have put on so far, I wouldn't put money on England this weekend. I really wouldn't.
You think we could get kicked out at the quarterfinals?
I think we could. I mean, looking at that there, you can see Jared Bowen in training, Conor Gallagher. These are players, obviously, who didn't even take to the pitch yesterday. I imagine, or one would imagine, that Gareth Southgate may be giving those players who played yesterday a little bit of a break. But
he hasn't changed up the team all that much.
No.
It's been broadly the same team, the same layout each game.
Yeah. Really, the only change he made yesterday to the starting 11 was Kobbie Mainoo, who I must say, in this humble journalist's opinion, did make a big difference, I thought. But it just, when it came to half-time and we were still losing, there were calls after call to make that change from Gareth Southgate. And when they came out for the second half and no change had been made, I think there was a lot of shock. Certainly on social media, people very angry with the decision not to make a change.
And yet, 2 more goals were scored.
Last chance goals, yeah, Jude Bellingham with that bicycle kick. What a goal. I mean, but where's that been so far in the tournament, so far in that game?
Is this... OK, I don't watch a lot of football, but I do watch a lot of movies.
Yes.
And every single time in a movie, you'll have the hero down and out at the start, only to have the remarkable comeback. It's always darkest before the dawn.
I mean, Jude Bellingham certainly was the hero. I think I read it was 85 seconds before England would have been knocked out. So you couldn't really ask for a more dramatic ending to... Well, not ending to the game, because then, of course, we went into extra time when Harry Kane scored that header. Thank God for that. But, you know, where's the skipper been so far? He just hasn't been performing at the level one would expect. So... I think everyone in the nation will have their fingers crossed. I mean, at least we've made it to the quarterfinals.
Yes.
But everyone will have their fingers crossed. We'll just have to see.
And, of course, the government's promise was that if England made it to the quarterfinals, the pubs could stay open later.
So that's something, at least.
So we have at least achieved that low bar. But speaking of what the government is deciding, there are only 3 days to go until the general election, with many voters still undecided.
How are the two major parties spending their time on the final stretch of the campaign trail? Let's find out a little bit more now from our GB News political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, I believe you're out with a Conservative battle bus today, is that correct?
Yes, good afternoon, Tom and Sophie from the Conservative battle bus here in Staffordshire. I've been with the Prime Minister in his first of, I think, 4 visits today. I have to say the schedule this last week is going to be absolutely insane as they try to race across to all these battleground seats around the country. And the central message from the Prime Minister is it's changed, let's face it. It's changed because they know really, sure, not a single vote is going to be has been cast, but they know that Labour are going to win this election. They just don't know by how many. So his central message has now shifted, and he's saying, you know, I know people are fed up with us. It hasn't been easy. I know it's been difficult, but please stick with us, because if you hand Labour a blank cheque, he says, you're not going to get it back. And he's also, of course, hammering this message about taxes, saying, mark my words, your house, your pension, your savings, they will tax it. So really trying to make cross voters who probably previously voted for them and are maybe sitting at home thinking they might not vote, or they might vote for reform, to think again, saying don't hand Labour a big majority. Also talking at this distribution centre, we stationary at the moment, just waiting for him to finish. Talking about pharmacies, stressing, of course, that his mum was a pharmacist, but talking about migration as well, saying that it's coming down under their plans. Talking about illegal migration, the Conservatives have put out a line today saying that Labour's illegal migration plans, or lack of a deterrent, is going to cost every family £635 a year, because more people will need to be in hotels, they say. Potentially many more people will be given asylum. Labour have hit back of that, of course, and have said it's a ludicrous lie from an increasingly desperate party. So you can see the battle lines being drawn. The Conservatives now focused on trying to persuade people to stick with them to prevent a massive Labour majority.
And Catherine, you've been following the Conservatives around for quite some time now. What sort of sense do you pick up is the mood within the team around the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister himself? I mean, it's interesting that the lines have shifted from what they're going to do to simply don't hand Labour the largest majority in parliamentary history. Is he a changed man? Is he despondent?
Honestly, he doesn't seem despondent, but, you know, they know that things have changed. I was on the bus the day that he got it, about, 5 weeks ago, and even though they were 20 points behind in the polls then, they still believed that it was all to play for. They still thought that the polls would narrow, that something would turn up, that all their announcements, national service, etc., would cut through. Of course, that was before D-Day, before Gamblegate, before all these disasters that they have had. So, you know, the team around him, it's really hard. It's really hard for them. They were upbeat last week after the debate. They felt that he had smashed that. But, you know, they know what's going on. And the Prime Minister still seems upbeat. Honestly, I don't know how he gets up every day. His schedule is crazy. He is eating a lot of Haribos. But the Labour message has changed too, because I was with Labour last week, and they are very much now hammering the message. If you want change, you have to vote for it. Their concern is with these huge poll leads, with the projections of them getting massive majorities, that quite a few Labour voters will think, well, it's already in the bag, I don't need to worry. Of course, the Lib Dems yet again have stolen the show in terms of pictures, because Sir Ed Davey has been doing a bungee jump today, rather him than me, shouting as he fell down, do something that you haven't done before, vote for the Lib Dems, because he's never bungee jumped before. They want to talk about bereavement support that they say they would like to double if, of course, they get the chance to influence the incoming government. Of course, there are some suggestions that they could form the official opposition, but we're not there yet.
Goodness me, it is extraordinary, Catherine, isn't it, that if we were to have this conversation a month ago, 2 months ago, just casually saying the next leader of the opposition could be Sir Ed Davey, talking at all of these central projections that the Conservatives could get fewer than 100 seats. I mean, we're saying it casually now. We've become almost desensitised to this. But my goodness me, it is such a profound thing that I suppose if you were to talk in the way that we're talking now several months ago, people simply wouldn't believe you.
It is. It's absolutely incredible. And also talking to Conservative candidates as we go around the country, and what I'm hearing from them is it's not like the Conservatives are, their previous Conservative voters are going to Labour. It's basically their previous Conservative voters very often are either sitting on their hands thinking of not voting for them because they're very cross with them, or going to Reform. So we may have a situation that Labour could come to power, could get a huge majority, with less votes than Jeremy Corbyn got back in 2017. It really is quite incredible. And I do look back to the day that Rishi Sunak called that general election and think that in a parallel universe, when he had it in November, as we all expected, Nigel Farage would have been in America helping Donald Trump, and the Reform effect would have been nothing like as bad. And the economy, which is picking up, you know, people are not feeling the benefit of that yet, but by November they would have been. But here we are.
Catherine, thank you so much. We talked there about Sir Ed Davey doing that bungee jump today. I think we can now show our viewers a little bit of a clip of that.
There he is, shouting vote Liberal Democrats.
I think we've seen quite a few stunts from him in this campaign, haven't we? We've seen him on a paddleboard.
Yes.
We've seen him going down a water slide. I know he was going down a water slide into an aquarobics class at the weekend, but I think this is my favourite.
Yes, I mean, this is, I think, the most... I mean, there is some of the stunts he's done are more demanding, some are less physically demanding. I mean, sort of doing an aquarobics club, waggling around a noodle, I think is what he was doing. And going, riding a bicycle, all this stuff. This, I think, actually does take a bit of courage. And I think, I think that props to Ed Davey, really, for going ahead there. I was seeing some reports from the journalists on the ground who said he did look a bit nervous before doing it.
I'm not surprised looking at that there. That's, I mean, like you say, it takes courage. I also like the pun that take a jump and do something you've never done before. That seems to actually correlate with what he's doing.
Yes, sometimes these stunts don't actually quite work. Don't link to any sort of policy at all. At least this one sort of... There is a visual metaphor there.
Yes.
So, goodness me. And something for us to talk about, which we do enjoy. So thank you, Liberal Democrats. Thank you. Now over to France, where the right-winger Marine Le Pen has described her party or declared her party has practically wiped out Emmanuel Macron after a decisive victory, but just in the first round of voting in France's snap parliamentary election.
Le Pen's party, National Rally, has achieved around 34% of the vote, whilst President Macron's coalition have crashed into third place with around 21%.
Well, we're joined now by one of National Rally's parliamentary candidates, Charles-Henri Galloy. Charles-Henri, thank you so much for joining us. This is a result that I think many people will be concerned with in the United Kingdom. The history of Marine Le Pen is one that carries a great deal of controversy.
I mean, it's all past stories, and you know, the French people knows how that the party has changed. And now, if you look at the polls, you know, sometimes National Rally votes was, let's say, contestatory votes, and it was just to vote against someone or to say you're quite angry. But now it's really something that the French people want. You know, the main basics of our campaign are purchasing power, immigration, and security. And if you look at it, there is a huge appeal for French people to these topics. And I think it's no more the old National Rally you could know from Jean-Marie Le Pen history. It's a totally new National Rally party with Marine Le Pen, of course, with Jordan Bardella. And we are, actually, if you look at the polls, we could have an absolute majority in France, which would be honestly amazing, and it would be a piece of history for France and even for Europe.
Charles-Henri, just for our viewers at home, of course, in France it's a different electoral system to our own one here. You use the two-round system there. Can you just explain to our viewers what exactly that means and how it differs from our own?
I mean, with your system, we would have won, and I will have won on my, let's say, circumscription. I'm ahead of 41%, so I will have been elected. But in France, it's different. You've got two rounds. So normally you have the two first candidates that can apply for the second round. But sometimes you have the third candidate that can stay if he does more than 12.5% of the electorate. Normally, you should have been three candidates of almost 300 different circumscriptions, but it's not the case because you've got all political deals between Macron on the left. It means that when a National Rally candidate is first, they take back their candidate, which arrive third, whether it's the left or a Macron candidate. For example, in my circumscription, the left has removed his candidate and I will be alone against Macron candidate, which is honestly nasty politics because, you know, the left 5 times a row, they applied to vote for Emmanuel Macron. Emmanuel Macron did the pension reform. He did also the unemployment reform, which was very unpopular on the left. But they will remove their candidates.
So you think it's unlikely that there'll be this sort of grand, I suppose, tactical vote? Because, of course, National Rally got 34% of the vote. Now, that's first place. But if all of those other parties and those other groupings coalesce against National Rally in the next round, that could be nothing close to a parliamentary majority. It's not an unlikely situation.
I don't think so, because, you know, this kind of nasty political tricks, it's not working anymore in France. If you look at the polls, there was one which says that 74% of French people, they won't vote according to what the party asks. It means that someone from the left that removes his candidate, they won't vote for Macron. Maybe they will vote for National Rally. Maybe they won't vote at all. But this kind of big call to vote against National Rally is not working anymore. You have seen it in European election. I think we will see it as well for this second run. It's not working anymore. It was the case as well on the last presidential election. Each time Marine Le Pen is doing a better score result for the second run. So I think we will be close to have an absolute majority, which will be actually amazing.
Fascinating to watch. Charles-Henri Gallet, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very much for speaking with us. Next up, of course, England is coming up for the quarter-finals in the Euros 2024. We're going to be live in Germany after this.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
So, question is, what can we do to get young people to eat healthy food? Here's dietitian and nutrition consultant Helen Bond. Helen, what do you think?
Eating habits formed at this age tend to persist into later life. We know we're eating too much fat, sugar, salt, and not enough of the good things like fibre, you know, fruits and vegetables, all of those things. So, yes, we need to help this age group so they have the skill set and they have the nutrition knowledge to take that forward.
Do you agree that it is impossible to eat healthily on a budget and quickly as well? Or do you have any sort of fail-safe, affordable and very quick to prep meals that you'd recommend youngsters try?
It doesn't have to be expensive either, but you have to have those kind of cost-cutting hacks and those time-saving things in the kitchen. You know, make use, I always say, of things like peas, beans and lentils, which are a type of pulse, very inexpensive compared to meat, and yet they double up as one of your 5 a day, and also a great source of plant-based protein. You know, if you overget a milk as something, you have too much milk, maybe make some lattes.
I just wanted to throw a shoe at the TV, really, because was there nothing else on or nothing else available? The point being, there is an audience, there is obviously an appeal, there's obviously people are watching this stuff. So what are they doing? Are they watching and not cooking?
I think that's it. They're watching and maybe enjoying all the cookery programs like I do. And I'm a typical person in the kitchen. I must have about 100 cookbooks. But sometimes when you are time poor, you know, you've got to feed a family or you've got to feed yourself and everything, you don't really know where to start. And I think that's why apps and having things online for this younger audience makes it much more accessible. Start with one recipe and build it up from there. Like I said,
The People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 28 minutes past 12. Now, England scraped through to the quarterfinals by the skin of their teeth last night against Slovakia.
Jude Bellingham rescued England right at the death in the 95th minute of the game. Well, it took the game, of course, to extra time, and Kane got the winner.
Let's head to Germany now and speak to sports broadcaster Ben Jacobs. Ben, thank you so much for joining us again. Obviously, we spoke to you on Friday, didn't we, ahead of the game. We had high hopes. What did you make of last night's performance?
Well, the hopes looked far too high for 90 plus 5 minutes, and then Jude Bellingham produced an iconic moment, an overhead kick that really got England into gear, but also spared their blushes because they were 30 seconds from going out of the tournament in what would have been a real humiliation. We have to put it that bluntly. But Bellingham proved he was a big player. It was a phenomenal finish. And then from there, England took control 52 seconds into extra time. Harry Kane scored a header and suddenly momentum has shifted. So what we've seen is England's individual quality, but we still haven't quite seen them gel as a team. So they're going to have to use this as a wake-up call. And if they can improve, they're on that easier side of the draw. Suddenly, they might go all the way to the final and even win it. But one thing's for sure, if they put in that kind of performance again over 90 minutes against Switzerland, then they're still likely to go out.
Yeah, and Switzerland has been quite a strong team so far this Euros. How likely do you think it is that actually the quarterfinals is where England's journey will end?
Well, it would all depend, I think, on how they use this incredible, almost miraculous comeback when it looked like they were on the plane home. And if it's a wake-up call, they're favourites on paper against Switzerland. What we've seen from the Swiss is defensive solidness. They've been clinical when it's mattered, and they've had quite a lot of the ball too, and England might actually invite them to do that and hit them on the counter-attack and find pockets of space. So Switzerland have already knocked out the holders Italy, but they've not been great either. And England will watch that game, have some learnings, and then it's all on the players and ultimately Gareth Southgate. Can he get his selection and, as importantly, substitutions right? Will we see Cole Palmer, Trent Alexander-Arnold and Anthony Gordon didn't even play against Slovakia? Anthony, I think Gordon will feel that he can still make an impact. And then there's Ivan Toney, who did very well in a short cameo too. So the key to England's success is gelling as a team, having a bit more bite and balance, and then Southgate getting that first 11 and the substitutions right. And if he does so, then England are still the big favourites against Switzerland, despite the fact that their form has been indifferent in this tournament so far.
Of course, Gareth Southgate's faced quite a lot of criticism, hasn't he, Ben, about his selections and about his substitutions as well. A lot of calls yesterday going into half-time for him to make those changes as soon as possible, but he really didn't, did he? And I think there's been a lot of calls for him to lose his job, despite England actually making it through to the quarterfinals.
Well, I think Gareth Southgate was 30 seconds away from losing his job. It's as simple as that. You can't go out to Slovakia in the last 16 Euros and as the manager of England expect anything less. But we also have to give Southgate some credit, which might sound like a strange thing to say given the moaning from fans in the stadium and social media. And the reason for that is because he could have taken Jude Bellingham off. And Gareth Southgate said that in his post-match press conference, that they were considering it. But he stuck to his guns and Bellingham was ultimately the hero. Kane was not overly involved in the game either. He stayed on and scored the winning goal. So it's very easy to be an armchair manager. And absolutely, Cole Palmer probably should have been introduced earlier. Maybe Anthony Gordon as well. Trent Alexander-Arnold has phenomenal passing ability. He can play at fullback or in midfield, and he didn't get any minutes. So if England went out, we'd be saying, why Palmer so late? Why no Trent Alexander-Arnold or Anthony Gordon? But instead, Eze was excellent and he came on. Tony held up the ball well and contributed. Palmer did get his minutes, and the two players that maybe Southgate was considering taking off because they were not making an impact stayed on and both got goals. So in retrospect, I think Southgate may feel that he's had the last laugh. But if that hadn't happened, and miraculously, then I think by this morning, had England lost 1-0, then Southgate would indeed have already been out of a job.
Well, Ben Jacobs, thank you so much for talking us through that, and I think giving us some hope about next weekend. Everything that we can possibly cross is currently crossed. But coming up, the Royals have opened Balmoral Castle for extensive public tours for the first ever time. We're going to be taking a look inside. That's after your headlines with Tamsin.
Tom, thanks very much. Here are the headlines at 12:33. Political parties are appealing to undecided voters in the final days before Thursday's election. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is urging people not to give Labour a supermajority amid polls giving Sir Keir Starmer a 20-point lead. But the Labour leader says a clear mandate is needed to repair Britain's economy and warns apathy could lead to another 5 years of the Conservatives. Shadow Paymaster General Jonathan Ashworth told GB News a vote for Labour is a vote for change.
There are lots of people who are still deciding. Lots of people still weighing up their options. But honestly, if you want to change this country, you've got to come out and vote Labour. Voting for any of the other parties helps Rishi Sunak get re-elected. So if you don't want to switch on GB News on Friday morning and hear that Rishi Sunak has been re-elected, if you don't want to wake up to that, vote Labour on Thursday.
Many within the Conservative Party are now attempting to persuade would-be Reform UK voters to think again. Home Secretary James Cleverly told GB News that voters have a clear choice to make.
Which of the two parties that can credibly form a government do you want to form a government? Do you want it to be the Conservative Party? We have a plan. We are determined to bring down immigration. Or Keir Starmer's Labour Party, which is led by a man who said that all immigration legislation was racist. The Labour Party has voted against stronger border controls over 130 times, voted to delay the Rwanda scheme, which is why it's not yet up and running. So that is the choice at this election.
Sir Ed Davey is urging voters to take the plunge and do something they've never done before by voting for the Liberal Democrats.
3, 2, 1, bungee!
The party's leader took part in a bungee jump as he urged voters to take a similar leap of faith when they head to the polls on Thursday and vote for his party. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'm Tamsin Roberts and I'll be back in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, very good day to you. Here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Some of us in the south and southeast will cling on to some fine weather today. Elsewhere it is turning pretty cloudy and there will be some rain around in association with a frontal system that is gradually making its way southeastwards. This has already brought quite a bit of rain across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland and is now pushing its way into parts of northern England, later central England and also across parts of Wales as we go through the afternoon. Like I said, across southern South southeastern parts clinging on to some fine weather here. There will be some sunshine around, but turning a bit cloudier as we go through the day. In the sunshine, not feeling too bad. Temperatures just about getting into the low 20s, feeling cooler towards the north-northwest. As we go into this evening and looking at this in a bit more detail, across Scotland, the front will have largely cleared away across these areas, and so it's going to be a little bit clearer at times, some clear spells mixed in, but also perhaps a bit fresh. There could be some strong winds here as well. A bit cloudy across Northern Ireland as we go through the end of the day, but looking largely dry. However, the front is going to be lingering across northern, central parts of England and across Wales, so some thick cloud and some outbreaks of drizzly rain. Clinging on to the fine weather across the southeast through much of the day, but as we go overnight, the cloud and the drizzly rain is going to arrive here, so turning a bit damp through the night across many parts of the southeast and also some eastern parts of England. Further west, some clear skies developing, a few showers, but most places largely dry. It's not going to be a particularly chilly night, temperatures generally holding up, especially across eastern southeastern parts where we have some thicker cloud. Any drizzly rain across parts of eastern southeastern England will gradually clear away as we go through tomorrow. Otherwise, it's looking like a mostly dry day for many places, a few showers to watch out for, but also some bright sunny spells, and then some more persistent showery rain starts to push its way in to the far northwest as we go through later on. Temperatures will be similar to today, but feeling a bit cooler where the cloud lingers in the southeast.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, hello to you. I'm Jules Buckley, South Lanarkshire firstly, and the southbound M74 Lark Hall down to Candyside. That's junction 7 heading south to junction 8 now. Currently the outside lane is closed off for emergency repair, so long delays back towards the Wraith interchange junction 5. Your travel time there is around about half an hour. Still queuing Cardiff to Newport in South Wales, eastbound M4 junction 29 to 28. All lanes open though following an earlier breakdown. It is starting to improve. Now in Somerset, both sides of the M5 are shut around Bridgewater, so junction 23 to 24 and vice versa is closed. It's queuing northbound back to Taunton 25, southbound back to Burnham-on-Sea 22. There's a police incident. And just before Wesley, junction 10, the anti-clock M25, a lane shutting queues there due to a breakdown.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 39 minutes past midday. Now, the Prime Minister has just been talking to the press in Staffordshire. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
No, absolutely not. I'm fighting hard for every vote. I don't take a single place or person for granted. But I don't want Britain to sleepwalk into the danger of what an unchecked Labour government with a supermajority would mean. And that means handing Labour a blank cheque that people won't be able to get back, a blank cheque to put up everyone's taxes, to make us a soft touch of Europe when it comes to migration, to reverse my cost-saving net zero reforms, and to ensure pensioners pay a tax for the first time in our country's history on the state pension. I don't want that to happen, so I want to talk to as many people as possible about the choice at this election. A vote for the Conservatives, a vote to have your voice heard. I will fight for you, I will stand up for you, and crucially, continue to cut your taxes. Yeah, I worry about our nation's security under Keir Starmer and the Labour government. We are investing more in our defence, leading in NATO and in Europe. Keir Starmer is not going to do that. He's going to cut those plans. That sends an awful signal, not just to our allies, but to our adversaries, that we are not strong enough to invest in our own defence. And beyond that, his Deputy Prime Minister and his Foreign Secretary both voted against our nuclear deterrent, the ultimate guarantor of our security. Those are people who would deputise for him on a regular basis when it comes to matters of national security. Yes, so I am deeply worried about our country's future safety and security under a Labour government. I want people to focus on that. We are living in the most dangerous time that our country has seen for decades. That's why I've made the decision to invest more in defence and security, to keep everybody safe, to be a good ally, to send a signal of strength to our adversaries. Keir Starmer is going to undermine that and be surrounded by people who don't believe in our nuclear deterrent. I think that is very worrying, and it's a clear choice for people at this election. Now, you have to back up words with action. That's what we are doing. We're investing more in defence. You have to have strength to signal to your adversaries that we're not going anywhere. That's why under the Conservatives we're increasing defence spending to 2.5% of GDP. If Keir Starmer's in charge, those plans are going to be cut. Right, that's going to send a signal of weakness to our adversaries and to our allies, and crucially will mean that we won't have the funding to continue providing multi-year support to Ukraine. I can say that because I've got a fully funded plan to increase defence spending. That's why I can say we will support Ukraine for as long as it takes to ensure that Putin is not successful there, because that will harm our security. Labour can't say that because they are not prioritising investing more in defence. That is a very clear choice for people. If you believe, like I do, the world is a more dangerous place than it's been for decades, which, by the way, is what everyone who knows anything about this thinks, the right answer is to prioritise and invest more in our security to keep everybody safe. That's the first duty of a Prime Minister. That's what I've done. The Labour Party on this issue cannot be trusted with our security. And remember, Keir Starmer not once but twice said that Jeremy Corbyn would be a great Prime Minister, right? Like, that's his track record on this issue. Well, that's what the illegal migrants themselves in Calais are saying. They know that Rwanda is not somewhere that they would like to go.
People are coming now, though, aren't they?
It is a deterrent. It's very simple. I don't think illegal migrants should get to stay in our country. They should be removed to a safe alternative. That is the only way to stop people coming in the first place. That's what you'll get if I'm your Prime Minister. A vote for anyone else just means that we are going to become the soft touch of Europe when it comes to illegal migration. We've had two debates head-to-head, and anyone who's watched them would have seen that Keir Starmer just simply can't answer the question. What would he do with illegal migrants that come to our country? He doesn't have a plan. I have a plan. They're going to go on planes. They're not going to be out on our streets. That's how we'll solve this problem. Anyone who cares about this issue has got to vote Conservative. Do not surrender our borders to the Labour Party. Do not vote for anyone else. Vote Conservative so we can stop the boats.
Well, he is obsessed with the blank cheque, isn't he? He seems to talk about that quite a lot, rather than going into something too specific. But
well, he keeps using that word that Labour would govern using a blank cheque. They're not spelling out their plans. I suppose that must focus group quite well. But it is interesting. He's not really talking about his policy. He's talking about what would happen were Labour in charge. It feels like that's where the conversation has moved to. That's all he can say now, because that doesn't sound like a man who says, I'm going to win. It sounds like a man who says it's going to be really bad if the other guys do.
Which is ironic, because he keeps saying he's a man with a plan, but then, as you say, he'll talk about that Starmer is the man without a plan, rather than elaborating on his own necessarily.
But, I mean, what else can he do at this stage? I mean, we've all seen the polls. The polls might be out by a bit. They're not going to be out by 20 points. We're in for a large Labour victory. And it seems that all the Conservatives now can do is say, reduce the scale of that victory rather than turn around the Titanic.
Absolutely. And obviously we've seen Reform coming up in the polls as well. Is it going to be that Conservatives the opposition, or is it going to be Reform?
Well, I think it's very unlikely that Reform will pick up more than a handful of seats.
You never know.
But, of course, someone that might bungee jump into the position of leader of the opposition is, of course, Ed Davey. I mean, if the centre-right vote in the UK is divided 18 points, Reform Conservatives, who comes through the middle? In many seats, that's the Liberal Democrats. In many others, it's the Labour Party. It's going to be a very, very peculiar House of Commons.
Absolutely. Now, coming up after the break, the search for Jay Slater is called off, but the family of the 19-year-old who went missing 2 weeks ago now are set to carry on. We'll have the details after the short break.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
We've been talking about the White House is concerned with playing down concerns about the health of President Biden, who's apparently taken to freezing during public events. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni was seen herding the president back into a photo with world leaders after he shuffled aimlessly away from the group. In the last few days, videos and images of the president freezing at a fundraising event went viral, but the White House stated that they were deceptively edited cheap fakes. With me now, again, is my panel, the historian and broadcaster Tessa Dunlop and the associate comment editor of The Telegraph, Mujaz Ahmed. Mujaz, I mean, you are a journalist. What about this idea that in some way the images could be fake?
They could be fake, and some of them will be fake. But the reason these AI images or AI videos or weirdly edited videos are a problem for the White House is that people have seen enough of Biden freezing in real life.
It's not going away, this one. It's perception versus reality, but as Mustafa said, it doesn't matter because it's now become Biden's reality, which is bushfighting these questions about his ability connected to his age. I don't understand where you go from here. He's got a vice president who isn't presidential material, who I think polls worse than he does, despite these, you would call them ageist. In many ways, it's about his competence, isn't it?
It can make a big difference when the president whose mental competence is under question, is running on the matter of competence itself. They're trying to paint Trump as being incompetent, as being not presidential, as being unable to lead, while they have a candidate who struggles to get off the stage. Yeah. That's the issue for them. And it's not really about age. He's not much older than Trump, as you say. It's about the appearance of age.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Congratulations to the GB News winners at this year's Trick Awards.
And the winner of Interview of the Year is... Alistair Stewart reveals his heartbreaking diagnosis to Camilla Tormini.
And the winner is GB News Breakfast. And the winner is Nigel Farage.
And thank you to you, our GB News viewers and listeners, for making us the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live Election Night Watch Party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 48 minutes past 12, and now to a historic moment for a historic royal residence.
Balmoral Castle is throwing open its doors for the first time to the public. Visitors will get an insight into the castle's interior designs, as well as the history of the King's Scottish retreat. We're joined now by our Scottish reporter, Tony Maguire, who's at Balmoral Castle for us. Tony, what's it looking like up there?
Good afternoon, you two. Well, certainly the weather isn't doing us any favours out here, but of course the real fun and games is inside. And today, and from now through until about mid-August, 40 lucky people every day are going to get a real historic tour of some of the biggest and most important rooms at Balmoral Castle, not least because they're going to be the first really to get a sense of some of the King's interior decorating tastes, and certainly he's chosen some beautiful pieces of artwork to complement it. The tours are roughly about 90 minutes, and as I said, about 40 people will get them on a day, so it's not too overcrowded. You'll certainly see a lot of people perhaps walking back and forth behind me. They're just here to view the grounds, but a select number will get up and they'll get a chance to see some of the really special library. Now, one of the new visitor experience manager for the Balmoral estate, James Hamilton Goddard, he's most excited about the public getting to see the library in all its glory, which he says is possibly one of the most beautiful rooms in the entire residence. And interestingly enough, there's some of King Charles' great-grandmother's influences in here as well. One of the painters, which Queen Victoria was a huge fan of, I beg your pardon, lost that bit. But one of the painters that she was a huge fan of, well, they're also hanging in the walls, as well as the Stuart hunting tartan, which Queen Victoria used to have adorning some of the carpets. King Charles has returned to them as well. And for anyone lucky enough to have a little cup of tea at the afternoon tea ticket, well, on the King's request, they're going to be able to have their hot drink from the white Stuart tartan china, or a replica of it at very least. And certainly if that sounds like your cup of tea, then you're in for a real historic treat this summer.
Tony, thank you so much for that. So lovely to hear from you. And I think you're right. They would be very, very lucky to have that experience. Thank you, Tony.
Now over to the Jay Slater story, because Jay Slater's family are to meet with Spanish police today after officers called off the search for the Lancashire teenager in a mountainous area of Tenerife.
The family say they will continue to look themselves after being left disappointed by a call for volunteers, which saw just 6 people turn out to look for the teenager over the weekend. Well, joining us now to tell us more is our reporter, Charlie Peters. Charlie, it's 2 weeks today since Jay was last heard from. What new lines are there?
Well, very limited, and part of that is because the civil guard in Tenerife don't have a very public-facing strategy. They're quite similar to the gendarmerie in France or the carabinieri in Italy. They are a military force, really. They have links with the military. They are quite secretive in their operation. There are no press conferences here. There's no family liaison officer, even. So they're not really keeping in the family in the loop with the details of the operation. But journalists on the island speaking to the civil guard in a non-public-facing manner have reported in the last couple of days that they are keeping all lines of inquiry open. And even though they've closed this public-facing search, there is a wider investigation still going on. And a journalist I've been speaking to who's on the island told me that even if they're not visibly involved with this operation as they were over the last couple of weeks with those mountain rescue teams, this investigation is open and pursuing different lines. Potentially, that Jay Slater is being held against his will. This has been something that's been raised regularly, and that is almost certainly a line of inquiry that the Civil Guard in Tenerife will be considering. And as that goes on, Jay's family are said to be heartbroken and devastated that this public search has closed. But people involved with the operation have said that if the Civil Guard did truly believe that Jay Slater's body was in that area, then they would continue that search. His last known location was that area in the rural Deteno Park, 8:50, 2 Mondays ago. They've scoured that area over and over again. They brought in sniffer dog reinforcements from Madrid last week. They've had a whole week to operate with helicopters, drones, several units. If he's not there, the investigation has been widened to other areas.
Although this was clearly a costly operation, 2 weeks on, clearly if it's going to be a search operation in this area, this mountainous terrain, it would be a recovery operation. Are they not just cutting costs?
I haven't heard them respond to that criticism, but it's clear that they're still investigating elsewhere. Cutting costs, I mean, they're duty-bound to investigate if someone's gone missing, and they've certainly scoured the understandable and legitimate radius in which they have been issued to track. If they'd expanded the radius further and further away from that really rocky northwesterly area, there's only so far that Jay Slater could have possibly travelled, considering the state he was in on that phone call reportedly had with his friend Lucy.
Well, Charlie Peters, thank you so much for bringing us that. Up next, we're going to be hearing live from the Labour Party leader, Sir Keir Starmer. Just 3 days of campaigning until the election. Here's the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again. Here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There will be some dry and at times sunny weather around as we go into tomorrow, but there's also going to be quite a bit of cloud for some of us and some outbreaks of rain, all due to a frontal system that is marching its way southeastwards currently. That's already brought a bit of rain across northern parts and will continue to bring some rain across many parts of England and Wales as we go through the rest of today. In the southeast, clinging onto the dry weather well into the overnight period, but then things are going to turn a bit cloudy and a bit damp here as we go through the night. Further west, some clear skies are going to develop overnight, but temperatures not dropping a huge amount. Most places holding up in double digits, particularly mild towards the east of England where we have that thicker cloud. So in the east and southeast, it is going to be a bit of a grey, damp start to the day tomorrow. If we take a closer look, and you can see some drizzly rain around, nothing particularly heavy here. Further west, a brighter picture, some sunny spells, a few showers perhaps for North Wales and northwest England. Mostly dry for Northern Ireland and much of northeastern England and eastern Scotland, but further west over western parts of Scotland, some fairly frequent showery rain quite likely here, perhaps the odd heavier burst, and some slightly blustery winds here, whilst elsewhere the winds don't look particularly strong. As we go through the day itself tomorrow, that rain cloud in the southeast will clear away and so turning drier here, but otherwise some bright sunny spells for most of us, a bit brighter, sunnier than today generally. However, towards the northwest of the UK, some more persistent showery rain will push its way in and a few showers are possible elsewhere. Temperatures similar to today, but in the southeast where we cling on to a bit more cloud, it may feel a little bit cooler. More rain piling its way in across northern parts as we go through tomorrow evening. Further south though, staying dry as we go through the end of the day. There could even be some late sunshine around. As we go through the rest of the week, some more changeable weather to come, particularly on Wednesday and Friday, and temperatures generally around or a little bit below average.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our summer treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest cash prize of the year so far. With an extra £30,000 in your bank account this year, you could take the ultimate financial holiday and send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could get you those nagging home improvements done, buy that brand new car, or just enable you to kick back and relax for the rest of the year. For a chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
He fell into a coma. His family, of course, absolutely distraught. Because Turkey is outside the European Union, it therefore doesn't count under the Global Health Insurance Card scheme, which means that he is liable for these costs, and the family say that he's being held there for until they pay at least half the £41,000 that is owed.
One of our viewers here saying their premium, because they have health conditions, can be as much as £1,000. But if they're going to go overseas to, as you say, a non-EU country, they still should take it. That's the message here, isn't it? Don't take the risk.
Absolutely. Now, if you do have lots of pre-existing medical conditions, or you're an older person, my lovely mother-in-law is going to be 95 this week. She's still travelling, but only within Europe, and only because the cost of insurance is going to be many times the cost of the trip. And she just thinks, OK, well, I'll get emergency medical treatment free if I'm in the European Union and I've got that GHIC card. But beyond that, absolutely not. It's not worth the risk.
You have to have your card, do you, Simon, to get treatment within the EU? You should just apply for that online.
You should certainly apply for it online. Don't go to any of the scam sites that want to charge you money for it, because it's a free card. But actually, if you haven't, it's absolutely not a huge problem. Yes, you have to go through a bit of rigmarole, or at least your family do, to sort it out. But in general, if you go to a public hospital, they will treat you first and ask questions later in the European Union. And if you're a British resident, you should get it for free. Even if you forgot to get the GHIC card, they will sort it out eventually.
Britain's election channel. GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Monday, the 1st of July. I'm Sophie Reaper.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
3 days to go before the day of judgment, and the gloves are off. The main Tory attack line is to warn voters that Labour can't be trusted with immigration. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer is telling Brits not to risk another 5 years of Conservative rule.
Elsewhere, Ed Davey is up to his old tricks, hoping voters will do something they've never done before and jump to the Liberal Democrats.
They queued overnight in SW19. We're joining the tennis fans for the opening of this year's Wimbledon Championships. But will Andy Murray grace the centre courts for one last time?
And a damp squib. Festival goers sat on the ground at one of the emptiest crowds ever recorded at a Glastonbury headline act last night. R&B singer SZA failed to draw in the numbers and was plagued by microphone issues. I've got to feel sorry for SZA.
Yes.
Microphone issues in the first 30 minutes of her set. We've all been there. It's not nice.
No.
But even before that, it was a thin crowd. People were sitting on the floor.
Well, when you compare it to Coldplay the night before, incredibly emotional performance for Fix You, the crowd's absolutely jam-packed, then I think you're right. I do think we need to feel a little bit sorry for SZA. That can't have been the nicest of feelings.
But, I mean, SZA is one of the most streamed artists in the world. Billions. That's billions with a B of plays on Spotify and all the rest of it. I've read that they were trying to reach out to Generation Z by getting SZA there and trying to sort of be more youth-focused. But clearly, just because someone is streamed a lot online, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the same headline sort of vibe that a more established band might be.
Well, when we talked earlier, didn't we, about Elton John last year? That, to me, is a headliner of Glastonbury.
Yes.
That is what those people go in, that's what they're expecting.
Yeah.
And I just don't know if that necessarily delivered well.
Well, apparently Avril Lavigne was on one of the much smaller stages.
Yes, but they had
and
to
got
close
an
it down.
packed-out crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
But
a bit of a...
I think maybe people could name more Avril Lavigne songs than they can SZA
I
songs.
certainly can. Well, we want your views and comments. You can do that by visiting gbnews.com/your say. That's after your headlines with Tamsin.
Sophie and Tom, thank you and good afternoon from the GB newsroom. It's just after 1 o'clock. The Prime Minister says Britain would become the soft touch of Europe on illegal migration under a Labour government. He says flights to Rwanda are an essential deterrent for illegal migrants coming to Britain and warns that other parties have failed to put forward credible alternatives. He also took aim at the Reform UK leader, saying that Nigel Farage has not done enough to tackle allegations of racism within his party. Meanwhile, political parties are appealing to undecided voters in the final days before Thursday's election. Rishi Sunak is urging people not to give Labour a supermajority amid polls giving Sir Keir Starmer a 20-point lead. But the Labour leader says a clear mandate is needed to repair Britain's economy and warns apathy could lead to another 5 years of the Conservatives. Shadow Paymaster General Jonathan Ashworth told GB News a vote for Labour is a vote for change.
There are lots of people who are still deciding. Lots of people still weighing up their options. But honestly, if you want to change this country, you've got to come out and vote Labour. Voting for any of the other parties helps Rishi Sunak get re-elected. So if you don't want to switch on GB News on Friday morning and hear that Rishi Sunak has been re-elected, if you don't want to wake up to that, vote Labour on Thursday.
Sir Ed Davey is urging voters to take the plunge and do something they've never done before by voting for the Liberal Democrats.
3, 2, 1, bungee. By Liberal Democrats!
The party's leader took part in a bungee jump as he urged voters to take a similar leap of faith when they head to the polls on Thursday. He thinks people who are disillusioned by the Conservatives should consider voting for his party.
Asking people to do something, many people do something they've never done before, which is vote Liberal Democrat this coming Thursday. We're finding a lot of lifelong Conservatives considering us. They don't want to vote Conservative. Some young people who've never voted before, and we're saying, do something you've never done. I've just done it. I've never done that before. So take the plunge. Vote for health and care, which is our top priority, unlike anyone else's. Vote for a proper economic policy. Vote to end the sewage scandal and action on climate change. I think we've got policies that will attract people who are normally Conservative.
The populist right National Rally Party has taken more than 30% of the vote in France's elections, putting it on the cusp of forming government. The first round of voting is a huge setback for President Macron, whose centrist alliance trailed in third place with just 20%. If the current momentum continues, it could be the populist right rising to power for the first time since the Second World War. The final outcome will depend on days of negotiations between parties before next week's runoff vote, though many are now predicting a hung parliament. Energy prices will become cheaper from today as the latest price cap takes effect. The energy regulator Ofgem's cap fell by 7% after a drop in wholesale prices. It means that typical 12-month bills will be around £112 cheaper than they were a year ago, though another rise is expected in October. The average house price was up by 0.2% in June as higher mortgage rates keep many people out of the property market. It means the average cost of a home across the UK is just over £266,000, which is 1.5% more than last year. According to the index by Nationwide, earnings growth has performed better than the property market in recent years, but it hasn't been enough to offset the recent spike in mortgage costs. Job centre security guards have begun a week-long strike in an escalation over pay dispute. The GMB says around 1,500 of its members employed by G4S will walk out. The union said 90% of guards are paid just the minimum wage. And British champion Emma Raducanu takes a centre court in Wimbledon later, where she's expected to face tough competition from her Russian opponent. The crown jewel of British tennis gets underway today, with reigning men's champion Alcaraz looking to retain his title. Andy Murray is expected to decide this evening whether or not he'll make a final singles appearance. The two-time former champion has been in a race against time since struggling with a back problem that led to surgery just last week to remove a spinal cyst. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 8 minutes past 1. And now, with just 3 days to go until the general election, party leaders have been out and about drumming up support.
So how are the two major parties spending their time on the final stretch of the campaign trail? We're joined now by GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster from the Conservative battle bus. Catherine, I know you've been following the Conservative and Labour battle buses closely over the past few weeks. What's happening with them today?
Yes, good afternoon, Sophie and Tom. So we were just in Stoke-on-Trent South a little bit earlier at a medical distribution centre with the Prime Minister. He was giving a speech, he was taking questions from workers and also talking to journalists. And the Conservative central message certainly has changed now, because it's all about saying you need to vote Conservative to stop a Labour supermajority. Any pretence really that the Conservatives are going to win this election has clearly gone now. The Prime Minister says that he is fighting for every vote, but very keen to stress any vote for anybody other than Conservatives, especially Reform, is effectively a vote for Labour. So, you know, you can see how it has changed. Stoke-on-Trent South, where we were, that is a seat with a notional majority of about 15,000, because there's been some slight boundary changes there. It's a seat that was solid Labour right up until it was taken back in 2017 quite narrowly, and then had a much bigger majority in 2019. And this is over and over again the sort of seat that the Prime Minister, that the Conservatives are visiting. Seats that they currently hold with quite comfortable majorities of up to 20,000, seats that would have appeared safe, but it does seem at the moment that there's really no such thing as a safe Conservative seat. And depending on what happens, and of course not a single vote has been cast yet, but we do see all these projections, don't we?
It often happens with reporters live on the road. Signal cut out there from Catherine, but we got the gist. Very
Absolutely.
interesting. The Conservative campaign going to these safe seats or these seats with larger majorities rather than the more marginal ones.
Absolutely, and I think if Catherine Papps would have gone on to talk about what the Lib Dems are doing today, Sir Ed Davey doing that bungee jump, I wonder if we've got the pictures, but I'll narrate just in case. Sir Ed Davey doing that bungee jump, telling voters to do something new and to jump into voting for the Liberal Democrats.
Yeah, do something they've never done before.
Never done before,
and I have to say, looking at his face before he jumped, it really did seem that was something that Sir Ed Davey has never done before.
There we go, we can see him there.
And that, I mean, it is quite he's got his arms outstretched, waggling around, and all the while shouting, "Vote Liberal Democrats." I mean, it's quite the strangest campaign I have ever seen.
Certainly a statement. I'm not sure how many votes it will garner, but it's a way to make the headlines.
It certainly is. I mean, other party leaders, of course, have been standing in factories today, making speeches in front of backgrounds.
Yep.
Are we showing them as much as we're showing Ed Davey?
Of course not, because I think our viewers would much rather see a man jump on a bungee than to see...
Let's see it one more time.
Yeah, it's brilliant, honestly.
No, I think we can... yeah, there he is. There he is, dangling. Oh, and...
they've frozen it, just so we can really take in the fear on his face
the
there.
Athletic figure of Sir Ed Davey. This is, of course, the leader of Britain's third largest party, by last time round's vote share, of course. But, I mean, this could be the leader of the opposition.
Who knows? I mean, I will say I think he's better at bungee jumping than he is at paddleboarding or aqua aerobics.
Yes, I think it takes less skill to bungee jump.
Well, that's true, but certainly more courage.
Yes.
Yes.
I think that is the balance that I think we've provided there. Now, across to another election, because in France, the pretty hard-line right-winger Marine Le Pen has declared her party have practically wiped out Emmanuel Macron after a decisive victory in the first round of voting in France's snap election.
Le Pen's party, National Rally, has achieved around 34% of the vote, whilst President Macron's coalition have crashed into third place with around 21%.
Well, let's get more on this with the editor-in-chief of the Brussels Report, Peter Klepp. Peter, thank you so much for joining us. There are two big takeaways here. National Rally seems to have done a bit better than was expected, but also the group that came in second...
I think we can cross now, sorry about that, Pieter, to Buckinghamshire, where Sir Keir Starmer is now speaking.
On Thursday, in good spirits, campaigning with a smile on our face, a spring in our step, the only positive team left on the pitch, I think, at the moment. And it's down to you. So thank you so much for that, because here we are. It feels like summer. We're in this lovely pub, lovely countryside, lovely pub food in there for a summer's day. And this has to be a summer of change. That's our one job this summer, a summer of change. And so whether you're a family that's been struggling with the cost of living crisis for months and years on end with bills bearing down on you, whether you're a business that's struggled because of the damage that's been done to the economy, or whether you've served your country in uniform or in your community, then this campaign, this positive Labour campaign, is for you, and the fight for change is for you. But change will only happen if you vote for it. And that is the message that we need to take to every doorstep these last few hours and days until 10 o'clock on Thursday night. Change only happens if you vote for it. And we can point to our own change. Callum referred to it. We have changed the Labour Party. A Labour Party that proudly says country first, party second, that has a positive story about the future of our country to take forward. A changed Labour Party asking for the opportunity to change our country for the better. And so we go forward into the last yards, the last days. And you know what they say? The last yards are the hardest. It's like the last few bits of a marathon. It's really, really hard now. And nothing must be taken for granted. Every vote has to be earned. The polls don't predict the future. We have to go out there because people don't necessarily have the attitude that change is possible or that you can vote for change. And our job is to absolutely make clear change is on offer. and you can vote for it. We go out there and make that campaign all the way through to 10 o'clock on Thursday night. But, and there's always a but in a Labour Party speech, we've got to redouble our efforts. We know that in every constituency it's a fight that will go down to the wire, that could have just a few hundred votes in it, that will make the difference to the future of our country. And we do have to ask people to imagine, if they dare, waking up on Friday morning to a further Tory government. Because if you haven't voted Labour, if you voted for some other party and not delivered the change, that is what will happen. We'll end up with 5 more years. We've had 14 years of chaos, division and failure, and that's not going to change. Have you seen anything in their campaign that suggests that chaos and division are not going to be changed by them? They will not change. They'll be emboldened. Or we can imagine a better Britain, where we start the work to rebuild the country, get the NHS not just back on its feet, but fit for the future, where we establish GB Energy, that publicly owned energy company, bringing our bills down for the future, where we recruit the teachers that we need for our young people so that wherever you come from, whoever you are, you get the best opportunities in life, where we make sure that everybody across the country feels better off because they've got a government that's on their side, that is rebuilding our country. So the choice could not be starker. It's either a continuation of the chaos, division and failure that we've had over the last 14 years, or we turn the page and start to rebuild with Labour. But change will only happen if you vote for it. Let's go forward. Let's go to Thursday. Thank you for everything that you have done so far. Thank you for everything you're going to do between now and the close of polls. Let's go forward with our brilliant candidates and let's make sure that we start that hard work of rebuilding our country. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Well, not the most inspiring speech from Keir Starmer there, but one big contrast to what we were hearing from Rishi Sunak earlier. Rishi Sunak in a safe, relatively safe Conservative seat by majority in 2019, around 20,000 vote share. Keir Starmer here in Buckinghamshire. It's true blue Buckinghamshire. While the Tories are campaigning in their own safe seats, the Labour Party is campaigning in Tory safe seats.
Absolutely, and I think there not really much talk about his own policies there. He talks about people going out on Thursday to vote. If you don't vote for Labour, that we'll have another 5 years, he said, of chaos, division and failure. That's what he says we've had for the last 14 years.
Yeah, it's interesting that he doesn't really need to promote much of a vision himself. We've often spoken about how the Labour Party is a party winning by default. Simply because all the other parties seem to be busy taking themselves out. And it could be the case, as Catherine Forster was saying earlier, our political correspondent, that Keir Starmer could win perhaps the biggest majority in parliamentary history on a lower vote share than any recent Prime Minister.
It is shocking, isn't it? And I think it'll be interesting to see what happens on Thursday. But, of course, 3 more days of campaigning before that. Now, England are through to the quarter-finals of the Euros, but what does the team have to do to improve what was a dismal performance against Slovakia? You're watching Good Afternoon Britain on GB News.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
The mystery surrounding the disappearance of flight MH370 has perplexed the planet now for 10 years. But now all of a sudden researchers at Cardiff University have piped up and said, oh, we heard a beep. Aerospace engineer, founder of MH370search.com is Richard Godfrey. Richard, are we going to find this thing?
The new research is much more thorough and gone in much more detail. It is picking up acoustic waves under the water. It's not conclusive, but it's a good step forward.
Is this a cover-up job of epic proportions? Do you think something quite sinister happened to this plane? Because it is all very odd.
I think you're right. It is all very odd. It is, we have a lot of data, but we don't have the final analysis, and we won't until we actually find the wreckage. The Indian Ocean is a huge place, 77 million square kilometers,
when we find the plane, we can recover the flight data recorder, the cockpit voice recorder. We can learn a lot more.
Do you think someone might have shot it down?
No, the plane flew until it ran out of fuel. The plane was perfectly in working order. There was an active pilot right until the end. So my only theory at the moment is the captain of the plane actually committed a hijack of his own plane. But until we find it, we won't be able to prove that.
We are potentially a step closer now to knowing and to one of the greatest mysteries of recent times anyway, finally being solved. There's aerospace engineer there, Richard Godfrey. Thank you.
Britain's Election Channel, the People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 22 minutes past 1. Wimbledon gets underway today, and we already have some protesters gathering. Let's cross live to the historic site and speak to our national reporter, Theo Chikomba. Theo, thank you for joining us. What's happening there?
Yes, well, it's the first day of Wimbledon, and while we are outside Centre Court and Court 1, there is a backdrop of protesters who are here from the Palestine Solidarity campaign, and they've been here since the early hours of this morning. There are just a handful of them now, but lots of them have been going around in this area since the early hours of this morning. And the reason why they are here, they are calling for Wimbledon to drop Barclays, the bank, which works as a sponsor for Wimbledon, and also their involvement to fossil fuels and supplying Israel with weapons. Now, what we do know is that Barclays have addressed this criticism in the last couple of days in a statement by saying we've been asked why we invest in 9 defense companies supplying Israel, but this mistakes what we do. That's what they said in their statement. And then just a word from All England Club, who work here at Wimbledon. They said in a statement, our ambition is to have a positive impact on the environment and at its core putting on successful championships like what we're seeing here in London. And they say we know this is one of the defining challenges of our time, and we are fully committed to playing our part. So they look like they're going to be here for the rest of the afternoon. We'll keep you updated with that. But throughout the day, if I could just turn around, we have been seeing probably tens of thousands of people coming here to Wimbledon. The capacity is 42,000. There's been a steady stream of people coming here to watch some of the biggest stars in tennis. But of course, while the tennis is going on, we do have this backdrop of protesters, many people using this as an opportunity to highlight some of the issues, not just here in this country, but right across the world. And of course, local people are using the opportunity as well to highlight some of the things which are happening in their local parks as well, some such as extension to some of the park that's been here, which is going to be used by fans. But for now, though, the protesters are here, and we'll be keeping an eye on what happens in the next couple of hours.
Obviously, Theo, we're waiting to hear about Andy Murray, whether he'll be gracing Wimbledon for one last time. Have we heard anything on that yet?
So what we do know is that Andy Murray is due to give a statement. The initial reports say he's going to give us an update later today. So everyone is going to be looking to see whether or not he's going to take part in the singles match, which is due to take place tomorrow here at Wimbledon. No news just yet, but we'll be keeping an eye on that.
Really, really good stuff, Theo. I wonder, is there much anxiety about the protest behind you? Of course, we have seen Wimbledon hit before by protests, although from the Just Stop Oil side of things. Does it seem relatively peaceful?
Relatively peaceful. They've been dancing with music and flying their flags here, but it's been relatively peaceful. The police are here. There is large police presence anyway because of the nature of the sport here, but it's been relatively peaceful. So no issues from what we have seen whilst we are here.
Well, Theo Shikomba, thank you very much, live from Wimbledon. Appreciate your time.
Now, England scraped through to the quarter-finals by the skin of their teeth last night against Slovakia.
Jude Bellingham rescued England right at the death in the 95th minute to take the game to extra time.
Captain Harry Kane then headed in an early extra-time goal to quickly dismiss any threat of penalties. What a relief, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, my goodness me, edge-of-seat stuff for the majority of that match. But we're joined by sports broadcaster Chris Scudder now. And what did you make of the game?
Same as everybody else, Tom, I think. I'm resigned to the fact that it wasn't going to happen. We've seen it so often. It really felt like that game against Iceland 8 years ago. And I was just thinking, what is the media going to make of this tomorrow morning? Gareth Southgate was sitting there out of his hands, hadn't made many substitutions, and I guarantee you, if England had gone out last night, his life would have been hell today. Armageddon, really. It would have been, the criticism would have been an absolute torrent. But on small things, look at Jude Bellingham, a national hero today, I think. And, you know, he is the main man. A lot of the argument about why England have been doing so badly is why is Southgate sticking by his stars? He should change, he should bring in new players. But he stuck to his guns. And, you know, in some ways, despite the poor show last night, he's been vindicated because the big players have bailed him out. England has scored 4 goals so far, 2 from Bellingham, 2 from Harry Kane. They've not fired together, really. They've been getting each other's way. Phil Foden as well, another fantastic player, but they got the job done. That's the message today. England got the job done. And I guarantee you, most people could not care less what it looks like. If England win and go on to win this tournament, doesn't matter what it looks like. But what a ride, really.
Chris, we've just been seeing pictures there of Jude Bellingham and Harry Kane celebrating those goals. I'm sure England fans will be hoping for a lot more pictures like that come this weekend when they take on Switzerland. What do you think? How do you think they'll perform against the Swiss team?
As I say, I mean, you get through. The knockouts are always very different. You know, it's a lot of teams that have won major tournaments start very slowly. You think of Portugal back in 2016 when they won in France. Nobody gave them a chance in that final. I was there, I remember. But they drew all their opening games and people thought, no, they're not going to do anything. But they won the whole thing. So, you know, there's a lot of room for improvement. We all know that. But it is about getting through. England are in the last 8 now, which is where they sort of get to usually, and better teams will come. The draw has opened up. They've got a game against Switzerland at the weekend, who traditionally England routinely beat. I think they've played 23 times. England have won 17 of those. The last time they lost to them was way back in the early 1980s. But, you know, they are a team which England haven't been so far. So I don't think Southgate will do too much different. I think he'll stick by those players who have bailed him out at the crucial moments so far, just about, but haven't played well. And it's going to be a battle, I think, between that great together team, Switzerland, who will be huge underdogs, against the Stars, who have got a lot more to come. So I'm where I am right now, I'm fairly happy that England are where they are. I think it will improve, and I think they'll get through against Switzerland.
Goodness me, it's going to be it's going to be another nail-biter, quite frankly, because the Swiss team's been playing quite so well. Were you saying that the Swiss, in your view, were the underdogs? I'm starting to feel like England are a bit of the underdogs in this tournament now.
Yeah, well, listen, as a nation, that's who we are, isn't it? But they won't be. Listen, England are one of the big nations, and we've seen Italy came with a big reputation, defending champions, and Switzerland beat them easily in the last round. I think it's a poor Italy team. England have been poor so far, but they are better than Italy. Really, I think they are. Switzerland, as I say, will have that togetherness. They've got Premier League players like Granit Xhaka, a member of him at Arsenal. And players with Premier League experience. But, you know, England will probably be sitting there today thinking, wow, you know, what an escape that was last night. What an escape. And they'll be believing now. It's sometimes, you know, that can be the catalyst. And they haven't played well so far. And it's just a question whether Gareth Southgate does want to tinker. My inkling is that he won't do too much different. I think he'll just do what he has to get this far. Maybe because they've got a player who played in defence last night, Mike Gahey, who's suspended. They'll have to change the formation, maybe play a 3 at the back as opposed to 4. But I think in the forward areas, it'll be the same people, I think. That may be depressing to a lot of people, but, you know, Southgate showed last night he does stick by his big stars and doesn't want to tinker too much. And Bellingham, who is, you know, a generational talent, had been much criticised. He was 21 years old on Saturday, but come the big moments, the big players do tend to put their hand up. And Harry Kane has had a poor tournament so far. He came up with a goal as well. And, you know, they're through, and that's the main thing. Quarterfinals on Saturday, and England, despite their poor showings, will be favourites to win that.
Well, Chris, you said that it was the 1980s when England lost against Switzerland, so I think all the fans will be hoping that that's the case. Chris Scudder, sports broadcaster, thank you so much for joining us. Can Labour be trusted with national security if it wins the general election? We'll put that to Shadow Cabinet Minister after your headlines with Tamsin.
Sophie, thank you. Here are the headlines at 1:32. Sir Ed Davey is urging voters to take the plunge and do something they've never done before by voting for the Liberal Democrats.
3, 2, 1, bungee.
The party's leader took part in a bungee jump as he urged voters to take a similar leap of faith when they head to the polls on Thursday. He thinks people who are disillusioned by the Conservatives should consider voting for his party. The Prime Minister says Britain would become the soft touch of Europe on illegal migration under a Labour government. He says flights to Rwanda are an essential deterrent for illegal migrants coming to Britain and warns that other parties have failed to put forward credible alternatives. He also took aim at the Reform UK leader, saying Nigel Farage has not done enough to tackle allegations of racism within his party. Meanwhile, political parties are appealing to undecided voters in the final days before Thursday's election. Rishi Sunak is urging people not to give Labour a supermajority amid polls giving Sir Keir Starmer a 20-point lead. But the Labour leader says a clear mandate is needed to repair Britain's economy and warns apathy could lead to another 5 years of the Conservatives. And in other news, energy prices will become cheaper from today as the latest price cap takes effect. The energy regulator Ofgem's cap fell by 7% after a drop in wholesale prices. It means that typical 12 monthly bills will be around £112 cheaper than they were a year ago, though another rise is expected in October. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tamsin Roberts. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2675 and €1.1793. The price of gold is £1,844 and 2 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 8,195 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Hello, very good day to you. Here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Some of us in the south and southeast will cling on to some fine weather today. Elsewhere it is turning pretty cloudy and there will be some rain around in association with a frontal system that is gradually making its way southeastwards. This has already brought quite a bit of rain across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland and is now pushing its way into parts of northern England, later central England and also across parts of Wales as we go through the afternoon. Like I said, across southern southeastern parts, clinging on to some fine weather here. There will be some sunshine around, but turning a bit cloudier as we go through the day. In the sunshine, not feeling too bad. Temperatures just about getting into the low 20s, feeling cooler towards the north-northwest. As we go into this evening and looking at this in a bit more detail, across Scotland, the front will have largely cleared away across these areas, and so it's going to be a little bit clearer at times, some clear spells mixed in, but also perhaps a bit fresh. There could be some strong winds here as well. A bit cloudy across Northern Ireland as we go through the end of the day, but looking largely dry. However, the front is going to be lingering across northern, central parts of England and across Wales, so some thick cloud and some outbreaks of drizzly rain. Clinging on to the fine weather across the southeast through much of the day, but as we go overnight, the cloud and the drizzly rain is going to arrive here, so turning a bit damp through the night across many parts of the southeast and also some eastern parts of England. Further west, some clear skies developing, a few showers, but most places largely dry. It's not going to be a particularly chilly night, temperatures generally holding up, especially across eastern southeastern parts where we have some thicker cloud. Any drizzly rain across parts of eastern southeastern England will gradually clear away as we go through tomorrow. Otherwise, it's looking like a mostly dry day for many places, a few showers to watch out for, but also some bright sunny spells, and then some more persistent showery rain starts to push its way into the far northwest as we go through later on. Temperatures will be similar to today, but feeling a bit cooler where the cloud lingers in the southeast.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon. Hello again to you. I'm Jules Buckley. Let's go to South Lanarkshire firstly for this update. The southbound M74 is still queuing. The outside lane is shut from Larkhall down to Candleside, junction 728 for emergency repairs. Takes about 40 minutes to get through. Travel time around about 40 minutes. Delays northbound at the M6 from the Orrell interchange at junction 26 up to Standish at junction 27. Starting to improve though, all lanes open. That follows an earlier collision. Now big queues in Somerset for the M5 in both directions around Bridgewater junction 24 to 23. The earlier collisions cleared, but still big delays, and the anti-clockwise M25 is still blocked at junction 25 at Enfield. There's a broken down lorry causing queues back to Waltham Abbey junction 26, and that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 38 minutes past 1. Now, earlier on, we heard from the Prime Minister telling us that Keir Starmer cannot be trusted to uphold Britain's national security.
It's one of Rishi Sunak's main attack lines, with the election now only 3 days away. Let's put that to Labour's Shadow Environment Secretary, Steve Reid, who joins us now. Steve, thank you so much for joining us. Only 3 days to go.
Pleasure. Yeah, just 3 days away from the election and the campaign that seems to have been going on for a very long time, but people haven't yet made their decisions, so we'll find out on Thursday night after 10 p.m.
And yet, Steve, the polls only show one picture. And anyone who's ever covered an election knows this. When all the polls are saying the same thing, the likelihood that they're wrong is so small to be dismissible. You're going to win big, you're polling ahead of where Tony Blair even polled in 1997. We're in for a supermajority Labour government. Why on earth are you pretending that things are closer than they are?
Simply to draw level with the Conservatives. Labour has to secure the biggest swing any party has achieved since the Second World War, bigger than that record swing, that huge swing that Tony Blair achieved in 1997. And so far, just a handful of people have postal voted. The vast majority of people have not voted.
Steve, the swing's already happened.
I've also been looking at the data. I've been knocking on doors and I've been looking at the data. There are millions of people who are still telling us they are undecided. This election everything is there to play for.
Steve,
in
you
it.
know as well as I
the
do.
Conservatives
Why are you
around...
pulling the wool over people's eyes here? You know as well as I do that some polls redistribute the don't knows and some don't. They both tell the same story. Whatever you do with the people that say they don't know, whether you say they're going to break for the Conservatives or break for Labour, you still win a massive majority.
I'll tell you what's going on. The Conservatives' record is so dreadful, they are unable to defend it. So the new tactic that they're adopting is to get out there on the media and tell voters the election is over before anyone has actually voted. They hope that by doing that, they can suppress people going out and voting for change because they will think change is already in the bag. If people listen to that, if people then do not vote, there is every chance that they will wake up on Friday morning and find Rishi Sunak smiling back at them.
Steve, do you think it's healthy to have a potential
situation? The same economic chaos that we've had for the last 4 years.
Do you think it's healthy to have a potential situation where you have a majority of not just 80 seats, not 200 seats, but maybe 300 seats? I mean, to have almost no opposition in the House of Commons at all, is that good for democracy?
Labour doesn't have a majority at all, Tom, simply to draw level with the Conservatives. So a zero majority, we need the biggest swing that anyone has had since the Second World War. People haven't voted. I'm amazed that you know how people are going to vote when they haven't yet voted. I've been knocking on doors and speaking to people, and there are plenty of people telling me they haven't yet decided how they're going to vote. So I don't know by what mechanism you're able to determine what is in their mind before they've even made their minds up, but people haven't decided. Change will only happen if people vote for change on Thursday. I'm not going to predict the result until I know what the result is, and we won't know until 10 o'clock on Thursday. The risk here is, if the Conservatives are able to pull the wool over people's eyes in the way that they are trying, if they can persuade people the election's over before people have even voted, then people won't vote for change, change won't come, we get the same chaos economically and with our public services that we've had for the last 14 years.
Steve, we've just heard Sir Keir Starmer speaking from Buckinghamshire, essentially saying the same as you about if you want to vote for Labour, then you're going to have to vote. We want change. We want less of the chaos, division and failure that the Tory party have brought out. But we're not really hearing much about what Labour are going to do. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Well, Keir has outlined his 6 first steps if we were in government. One of them that I've been talking about today is because we've had the energy price cap announcement today. 3 years ago, energy bills were on average £1,100, so they're £1,500. If we keep wedded to foreign fossil fuels in the way that we are, then we're at the mercy of the likes of Vladimir Putin and rising energy bills. If we take back control of our own energy in the way that Labour's proposing, investing in wind, wave, solar, nuclear, we can control energy supplies in this country, but crucially, we can cut bills by an average of £300 a year, every year, right the way as far as you can see into the future. That is a massive change. It's switching our economy from being fossil fuel based to clean energy. It's creating jobs up and down the country, and it's cutting energy bills for every business and every household in the country. That isn't a small offer, that is a huge offer. It's the equivalent of what happened in the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s, but doing it today as we transition to a clean energy economy. We want Britain to lead the way in that kind of change. We want British people to benefit from the lower bills. The Conservatives are just sat there with no ambition saying you can't do it. Well,
it's a lovely idea, Steve. But I'm sitting here in the real world looking at Europe and looking at the United States of America. In Europe, no matter which country you're in, energy is around twice as expensive as it is in the United States of America. One of these continents uses more fossil fuel, one of these continents uses more renewable energy. Now, it might be a good thing to use more renewable energy, but are you really trying to tell us that stopping using fossil fuels is economically advantageous?
If we can transition away from fossil fuels, we can get away from Vladimir Putin dictating the prices of energy bills that are paid
Why
by
are energy bills half what they are in the UK, in the United States?
And if we can harness the power of wind, wave, solar and nuclear, we can cut energy bills by 2030 by £300 a year.
Why does it cost the average person half as much to fill up their car in the United States than it does in the UK?
Well, If you'd let me get a word in, Tom, I could tell you that the Cross-Party Climate Committee supports that. Cross-Party Climate Committee. The Chief Executive of Octopus Energy, one of the country's biggest energy companies, says that is doable. Sir Patrick Vallance says that is doable. It seems that everybody can see this ambition can be achieved, apart from the declinist Conservative Party, who have no confidence in this country or in our future. Well, Labour's going to build that new energy supply, transition to clean energy, cut people's bills and create jobs up and down this country. But the only way we do it is if people come out and vote for change next Thursday. If people don't bother, then we get the same as we've had for the last 5 years, which is chaos and failure.
You talk about cutting energy bills. The Tory party today are talking about your asylum plans, that it would cost an extra £635 per year to cover the deficit. Is that going to be the case?
It's a bit hard to hear what you're saying because there's drilling going on College Green because they're erecting the scaffolding for election night. But were you asking about asylum? I mean,
yes, an extra £635 a year.
Conservatives. Oh, it's absolute nonsense, isn't it? You've got the Conservative under Rishi Sunak, 50,000 asylum seekers have landed on the shores of our country on the boats. They've had in 4 manifestos in a row telling us they were going to cut illegal immigration, and every time it's gone up. The Rwanda idea is a gimmick costing hundreds of millions of pounds. If we take that money and use it to process asylum claims faster, then instead of paying £6 million a day to put people in hotels, we can use it to fund a removals team that could take people who have no right to be in our country and remove them to a safe third country. What the Conservatives are doing is trying to cover up a record of abysmal failure. They have only a gimmick with Rwanda. We have a plan for how we can actually deal with asylum, and it's funded by stopping throwing money away at this Rwanda gimmick.
Well, Steve Reed, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for making your voice heard over the drilling and the hammering and all of the preparations on College Green. Appreciate your time. Thank you. Now, I'm actually really excited to see the tent city that pops up. Well, I mean, in 2019, it felt like there were tents on that part of the green outside Parliament for months in a row. I think it might be over rather more quickly this time round.
Absolutely. Now, still to come, Glastonbury branded a disappointment by attendees with tech glitches and a low turnout for the headline act yesterday. But how will it go down in history? We'll be discussing that shortly.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The University of Cambridge has told students to stop flirting with staff under a new policy banning sexual relationships with professors. The new rules, which come into force next month, beginning of July, include a warning against behaviour that could be interpreted as flirtatious. University staff have been told they must report any behaviour that could constitute a student making advances towards a personal, particularly intimate relationship with them. If you're a tutor, how do you interpret what is flirting and what is just sort of like having a bit of banter?
In fact, you've got to
very nice trousers, by the way.
Thank you.
You see, you didn't even recognise.
Oh, I didn't. I think I'm blushing now. I'm blushing.
So, what's flirting? What's me complimenting your very well-fitting trousers? Yes.
Well, there is a line, because obviously when you're 18 and you go to university, it might be the first time you're away from home. It might be the first time that you're open to maybe a bit of a nightlife, social activity, drinking and all the rest of it. On the flip side, I know a couple who, this pupil ended up dating their professor, and they've been together for about sort of 15 years now. So I used to go after lectures with my professor and the whole seminar. We used to go to the pub afterwards, and I became very good friends with, she was a mature student. She was on the very, very far left of political. You wondered where that was going for a second, didn't you?
We're both breathing a huge sigh of relief.
Very quick for you, Joe. We're running out of very nice trousers as well. We're running out of time.
Not as snug as Charlie. I think you've got to have some rules in place that there's no abuse of power. Policing it's difficult. We ought to be in a position where you can say, get off, back off, or, banter's fine. Actually, I hate that word. I hate it almost as much as woke. Go on, email in.
Thank you very much. I'm flirting with both.
The People's Channel.
This election night, we're putting on a party.
And you are invited.
We'll be here with you.
Following all the twists and turns.
As well as all the live reaction from our election night watch party.
With our GB News lineup.
And as morning breaks, we'll be here with breakfast from 6 a.m.
As it becomes clear who the winners and the losers really are.
Vote 2024.
Thursday, the 4th of July.
Only on GB News.
Britain's election channel.
Congratulations to the GB News winners at this year's Trick Awards.
And the winner of Interview of the Year is... Alistair Stewart reveals his heartbreaking diagnosis to Camilla Tormini.
And the winner is GB News Breakfast. And the winner is Nigel Farage.
And thank you to you, our GB News viewers and listeners, for making us the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 10 minutes to 2. Now, let's talk a little bit about Glastonbury, shall we? Because the festival has been slammed by attendees as the most underwhelming yet.
Yes, it's had technological issues, allegations of miming, and what many have described as a disappointing lineup, marring the legendary event, of course, at Worthy Farm.
Yeah, it was a bit underwhelming, I thought. I don't know about you.
Yes, I think a lot of this criticism has come in for the big headline act, SZA, who is one of the most streamed musicians on the planet. Billions of streams, that's billions with a B, on Spotify. And yet, I don't know if people can name more than about 2 songs.
I don't think I can name any.
Kill Bill.
OK, I'll take your word for that, Tom. I think there was a lot of criticism when the lineup was first announced, because I remember I tried to get tickets this year, and I remember feeling a certain sense of relief that I didn't get tickets when they announced the headliners. Coldplay, I wouldn't mind seeing Coldplay.
Yeah.
Dua Lipa's got a few great songs,
Yes.
but the SZA, that's not for
I think Dua Lipa would be a better top headline final day moment than SZA. But it was strange to see all of these pictures of a very thin crowd, people sitting down on the floor.
Yeah.
I mean, that must have been actually quite difficult to perform in front of.
I imagine so, and especially when we're so used to seeing pictures. Like I know on screen now we're seeing pictures of Glastonbury. That's the Glastonbury we know, and the Glastonbury that we love. It's fields absolutely overflowing with people where you can barely tell. Look, that one particular lady's really enjoying herself there. I don't know who she's watching there. Maybe Shania Twain, my favourite. But yeah, I think for SZA, not great. And like you say, I think that would have been quite difficult for her.
Well, let's get the opinion now of music producer Nick Stewart. Nick, was it actually a flop? What did you make of particularly that last headline act?
Well, it certainly wasn't a flop. And good afternoon, and thank you for having me on. Glastonbury is never a flop. There was an outstanding performance by Coldplay on Saturday night. Eva's favourite band. Sunday looked a bit undercooked in terms of profile. Poor Janelle Monáe had to perform in the middle of the football match where England were playing. And SZA, unfortunately, is a big star in America, but has really yet to carry that fame across to Europe. Her set was unbelievably glamorous. It looked great on TV, but I think it probably failed to connect with the audience because they just didn't know enough of the songs. I mean, she played her big hit Kill Bill, but she struggled because the audience just wasn't aware of quite who she was.
Meanwhile, Avril Lavigne, we hear, they had to close down the field. It was so many people tried to go and see her. What's the difference between her and SZA, do you think?
More hits. You know, Avril Lavigne, I worked with Avril Lavigne 10 years ago. You know, she's a big global star with a serious catalogue. While she was doing her bit, the National, who've made at least 9.
Nick, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. We've got to get to the end of the hour, but so much more to come. Nick Stewart, thank you very much for joining us. Of course, much more to come in the next hour, not least the latest on Jace Later.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again. Here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There will be some dry and at times sunny weather around as we go into tomorrow, but there's also going to be quite a bit of cloud for some of us and some outbreaks of rain, all due to a frontal system that is marching its way southeastwards currently. That's already brought a bit of rain across northern parts and will continue to bring some rain across many parts of England and Wales as we go through the rest of today. In the southeast, clinging onto the dry weather well into the overnight period, but then things are going to turn a bit cloudy and a bit damp here as we go through the night. Further west, some clear skies are going to develop overnight, but temperatures not dropping a huge amount. Most places holding up in double digits, particularly mild towards the east of England where we have that thicker cloud. So in the east and southeast, it is going to be a bit of a grey, damp start to the day tomorrow. If we take a closer look, and you can see some drizzly rain around, nothing particularly heavy here. Further west, a brighter picture, some sunny spells, a few showers perhaps for North Wales and northwest England. Mostly dry for Northern Ireland and much of northeastern England and eastern Scotland, but further west over western parts of Scotland, some fairly frequent showery rain quite likely here, perhaps the odd heavier burst, and some slightly blustery winds here, whilst elsewhere the winds don't look particularly strong. As we go through the day itself tomorrow, that rain cloud in the southeast will clear away and so turning drier here, but otherwise some bright sunny spells for most of us, a bit brighter, sunnier than today generally. However, towards the northwest of the UK, some more persistent showery rain will push its way in and a few showers are possible elsewhere. Temperatures similar to today, but in the southeast where we cling on to a bit more cloud, it may feel a little bit cooler. More rain piling its way in across northern parts as we go through tomorrow evening. Further south though, staying dry as we go through the end of the day. There could even be some late sunshine around. As we go through the rest of the week, some more changeable weather to come, particularly on Wednesday and Friday, and temperatures generally around or a little bit below average.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£30,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours. It's our biggest cash prize of the year so far, and you could be getting that winning call from us to tell you that you're our next Great British Giveaway winner.
You're joking. Really? Seriously? It's not a line, what is it?
I'm slipping neck. Oh dear.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock. Like I said, I've never won anything like this. That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon. Thank you.
For a chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
On election night, we are throwing a party.
The GB News Election Night Watch Party will be live from Essex and you are all invited.
On air from 10 o'clock, we'll have familiar faces from across the channel, entertainment and lots more stuff as we keep our eye on all the results as they come flying in.
If you want to join our live election night watch party audience, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com/election party.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Monday, the 1st of July. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Sophie Reaper.
3 days to go before the day of judgment, and the gloves are off. The main Tory attack line is to warn voters that Labour can't be trusted with immigration. Keir Starmer, on the other hand, is telling Brits not to risk another 5 years of Conservative government.
Elsewhere, Ed Davey is up to his old tricks, hoping voters will do something they've never done before and jump to the Lib Dems.
And Balmoral Castle is throwing open its doors to the public for the first time. Royal fans will get an unprecedented behind the tartan curtains tour and an insight into the historic royal residence. Now, what a game. What a game.
For all the wrong reasons.
I have to say, I didn't watch the whole thing.
No.
I was, Emily Carver, who usually co-hosts this show, she happened to be getting married yesterday, so
yes.
I thought I'd turn up. And next to me, someone was watching on their phone, so I was sort of peering over as we ate. Actually, for most of it, I was pretty content not to look over.
I was going to say, you chose a good game not to watch much of because it was anxiety-inducing, it was nail-biting, and England left it to the last possible minute to score that goal, to take us to extra time where skipper Harry Kane could head the ball into the back of the net.
So it was actually the final 60 seconds?
Essentially, I think it was 85 seconds or so before we would have been out, and that was it, the end of England's Euro journey.
Wow. Talk about a last-minute revival, but in the discussion of the first 90 minutes, which perhaps we should talk less about, it's that last minute that mattered.
That, you know, they did what they had to do at the end of the day. Bellingham got that ball in the back of the net, and we lived to fight another day.
And a win's a win's a win's a win.
Indeed,
Doesn't matter if we win by 10 goals or 1, we're through.
Let's hope that we have the same situation against Switzerland on Saturday in the quarters.
Team.
Yes, but we will say fingers crossed for England. We want all your views on that and more. You can do that by visiting gbnews.com/USA. We'll have more after your headlines with Tamsin.
Sophie and Tom, thanks very much, and good afternoon from the GB newsroom. It's 2 minutes past 2. The Prime Minister says Britain would become the soft touch of Europe on illegal migration under a Labour government. He says flights to Rwanda are an essential deterrent for illegal migrants coming to Britain and warns that other parties have failed to put forward credible alternatives.
It is a deterrent. It's very simple. I don't think illegal migrants should get to stay in our country. They should be removed to a safe alternative. That is the only way to stop people coming in the first place. That's what you'll get if I'm your Prime Minister. A vote for anyone else just means that we are going to become the soft touch of Europe when it comes to illegal migration. We've had 2 debates head-to-head, and anyone who's watched them would have seen that Keir Starmer just simply can't answer the question, what would he do with illegal migrants that come to our country? He doesn't have a plan. I have a plan.
Political parties are appealing to undecided voters in the final days before Thursday's election. Rishi Sunak is urging people not to give Labour a supermajority amid polls giving Sir Keir Starmer a 20-point lead. But the Labour leader says a clear mandate is needed to repair Britain's economy and warns apathy could lead to another 5 years of the Conservatives.
This has to be a summer of change. That's our one job this summer, a summer of change. And so whether you're a family that's been struggling with the cost of living crisis for months and years on end with bills bearing down on you, whether you're a business that's struggled because of the damage that's been done to the economy, or whether you've served your country in uniform or in your community, then this campaign, this positive Labour campaign, is for you, and the fight for change is for you.
The populist right National Rally Party has taken more than 30% of the vote in France's elections, putting it on the cusp of forming government. The first round of voting is a huge setback for President Macron, whose centrist alliance trailed in third place with just 20%. If the current momentum continues, it could see the populist right rising to power for the first time since the Second World War. The final outcome will depend on days of negotiations between parties before next week's runoff vote, though many are now predicting a hung parliament. The average house price was up by 0.2% in June as higher mortgage rates keep many people out of the property market. It means the average cost of a home across the UK is just over £266,000, which is 1.5% more than last year. According to the index by Nationwide, earnings growth has performed better than the property market in recent years, but it hasn't been enough to offset the recent spike in mortgage costs. Those are the latest GB News headlines. I'm Tamsin Roberts. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 6 minutes past 2, and we're going to dive straight in to this general election. Joining us now is our political correspondent, Olivia Utley. And Olivia, you're following Keir Starmer around today. What's the Labour Party saying?
Well, I'm on the Labour battle bus today, and as you can probably see from the scene behind me, we are very much in Tory heartlands area. I'm in Buckinghamshire at the moment. Constituencies like this historically have had Tory majorities of over 20,000, but now the Labour insiders I've been speaking to suggest that they are marginal seats and that they can be won. We heard just now from the candidate here, this is actually a new constituency, and the candidate here said if someone had told him at the beginning of this election campaign that he would be standing up with Keir Starmer on the final week of the election campaign, trying to win over a true blue constituency like that he wouldn't have believed it. But here we are. On the other hand, despite what they're doing in constituencies like this, it seems that Keir Starmer's biggest worry at the moment are these rumours of a supermajority. He is deeply worried about voter apathy, about people just not bothering to come out to vote because they're so sure that Labour is going to win such a big majority, it doesn't really matter what they do. Now, Keir Starmer is very, very worried about that and is trying to warn voters today. His big message today is that no, if you want to get rid of the Tories, you do have to go out and vote Labour. Will that message get through? Because yes, one reason for the voter apathy is that there are Labour voters in safe Labour seats who are so convinced that Labour's going to get a big majority they're not worried about voting. But the other reason is that polling shows that Keir Starmer himself, still very little is known about him. Only 56% of the public, for example, know that he's a football fan, which seems pretty astonishing given how much he's spoken about football over the course of this campaign. And overall, the impression of Keir Starmer, the man who will probably be our Prime Minister on Friday, is a general kind of ambivalence. That's not exactly what the leader of the Labour Party wants people to be feeling in election week.
Olivia, ambivalence, like you say, is not the word that I'm sure Keir Starmer and his party will want to be associated with him if he is to become the next Prime Minister. What kind of message are they spreading today about, I suppose, 3 days to go? What do they want voters to do?
They just want voters, they want all voters who are Labour-minded to come out and bother to vote. They're not talking that much about policy anymore. They're talking a little bit about house building, something which might not actually go down that well in sort of leafy, green, rural constituencies like this, where you tend to get quite a lot of people who are opposed to the building of new houses because they're worried that their facilities and their services will be overrun by new waves of people. So they're talking a little bit about house building, but mainly they're They're just trying to get over that final line. Keir Starmer compared it to the last few miles of a marathon, the hardest bit. And what they're worried about really is that apathy. They're worried about sort of momentum fizzling out at the end of this pretty long and arduous campaign. And they're worried about complacency. They're worried about Labour voters being so sure of this super majority, which the Conservatives are actually quietly talking up to the general public, that they really want to make sure that people actually bother to go out and vote. That's their only message now. It's not really trying to persuade non-Labour voters to come over to the party. If they were going to be persuaded, the Labour Party thinks they would already be persuaded. It's all about just making sure that those people get out to the polls on election day.
Well, Olivia Utley, thank you so much for bringing us that live from Buckinghamshire. And just astonishing, Buckinghamshire is now where the Labour Party is campaigning. It makes me think that actually the Labour Party campaign has become a bit more duplicitous in the last few days. In interviews on television channels like this, you'll have Labour Shadow Minister after Shadow Minister saying, oh, we think things are very tight, it's going to have to be a big swing, oh, it's going to be a very close election, oh, we can't count on anything. But look where they go. Look where Keir Starmer is standing today. He's in a seat that has a Tory majority of 25,000. They're saying one thing and doing another. That seems it's a bit two-faced to me.
Maybe a bit of overconfidence, even. I think it's brave to be in Buckinghamshire. Brave.
Brave to be in Buckinghamshire. But I mean, if you're looking at the polls, if you're 20 points ahead, why not be in Buckinghamshire? If you're going to win 450 seats, if the Tories are going to be down to double digits, I mean, my goodness, this is an extraordinary moment in the election, but I think what's most extraordinary about it is how the Labour Party are trying to pretend they're not doing what they're doing.
Well, speaking about bravery, we've seen Sir Ed Davey bungee jump for the first time ever today, and amazing footage there. But I think we can bring some new footage now of him in, is it North Cornwall? Let's take a look.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, I think, if anything, this is braver, perhaps, than a bungee jump.
Is that spandex? It's close to, if not, certainly it's...
I mean,
wow.
but this is, I don't think we should mock this. This is great.
No.
More people should do this.
Yes.
This is the sort of active, healthy Britain that we need. And maybe if Ed Davey had a few more election campaigns, you know, it's a good thing.
I think there's one thing you can say about Sir Ed Davey throughout this campaign is that he is always 100% committed to whatever activity he is doing. I think on that paddleboard, he wasn't afraid to get on with it. In the aqua aerobics over the weekend, he was wafting that noodle around, and here we see him dancing. I don't know if that's a specific kind of dancing. Oh, that's a new move.
Certainly unique.
Yes.
But I think future academics...
There we go, there's the paddleboard.
Psephologists in years to come will be writing about Ed Davey and the Liberal Democrat campaign of 2024. I think whenever a politician does a ridiculous stunt in the future, it will be referred to as doing an Ed Davey.
Yes.
Because this is taking the sort of idea of publicity for the sake of publicity, of image without substance, perhaps to a ridiculous extreme.
Yes. Oh, there's the bungee jump again there. I think we've always seen the Liberal Democrats with stunts before, haven't we? When they've knocked things down, when they have him bursting through bricks built up, all that kind of stuff. But it just seems in this general election campaign that he's really kicked it up a gear, isn't he? CPR there. They believe he was doing archery the other day.
But this is what you have to do if you're a third party in British politics.
Yes.
The Labour Party and the Tories will always get the headline. They're the biggest parties, they'll always be mentioned. If you're in third place or fourth place, you really have to do things to be seen, do things to be talked about. The risk, of course, is that I'm not quite sure what policy he's trying to promote here.
It's bereavement today, isn't it? More money for bereaved families.
Right. I don't quite see how this is connected.
No, it's obviously we talked this morning about the bungee jump. It was about jumping into something one has never done before.
Yeah.
That linked. Him dancing in a park in Cornwall, I'm not sure that necessarily has a link to bereavement, bereaved families.
No, I'm not sure
but there
many
we go.
funerals have a dance or a group participatory...
Some must.
Maybe,
but,
maybe.
I mean, good on Sir Ed Davey. I think we wouldn't be talking about him if he was doing something boring, would he?
I think
and here he is.
TV picture editors the world over are saying thank you to the Liberal Democrats at the moment.
Political gold.
But over to something slightly less political, because it's a historic moment for an historic royal residence. Balmoral Castle is throwing open its doors for the first time to the public, and visitors will get an insight into the castle's interior designs, as well as the history of the King's Scottish retreat.
Well, we're joined there by our Scotland reporter, the lovely Tony Maguire, who's at Balmoral Castle for us. Tony, you're outside there. What's the atmosphere like? Has anyone you've seen yet who's going to actually get the chance to go in?
Good afternoon. Well, certainly it's a bit of a strange one. You know, behind me you see lots of people who are going up into the grounds of Balmoral Castle as, you know, for the summer the castle grounds open, and, you know, people speak very highly of the gardens for which they're able to walk around. But for this specific event, to give you an idea of the exclusivity of these tickets, for only 40 people a day from now into the middle of August are going to be able to go on this tour inside Balmoral Castle. Well, they, for the first time, are getting to drive up and into the grounds, which unfortunately makes talking to them that wee bit more difficult. However, you know, speaking to a lot of people here who are just in to pad about the grounds today, you know, there's a lot of envious voices, shall we say, for people who just missed out on the tickets for this, you know, real special occasion, because this is actually the first time that the public will be able to set foot in Balmoral Castle in such a way in 170 years. Quite amazing, and they're going to get a behind-the-scenes look at what the King's interior design choices are. Now, we've got some notes for you laid out by the new Visitor Enterprise Manager, James Hamilton Goddard. He said that the library in particular, he's very excited to let the public see, because he thinks that is just the most beautiful room in the whole estate, quite frankly. And then we also know that paintings from Sir Edwin Henry Landseer, which were also a favourite of Queen Victoria way back in the day, well, they are back on the walls and ready to wow those who set foot in the castle today. And another interesting little nod to the Queen Victoria are the drawing room carpets, which have been reverted to one of the King's favourite tartans, the Hunting Stewart. And for those who are even luckier, who have a little afternoon tea to, you know, wet their whistle while they're up there today, well, they're going to have a replica set of the White Stuart tartan china, which the royal family get to use themselves. So if that's your cup of tea, certainly that sounds like a fabulous way to round off a spectacular and, well, I say rather sought-after experience here at Balmoral Castle, which, let's face it, is already in one of the most beautiful parts of Scotland.
Well, Tony, as you've been speaking there, we've just been looking at some really beautiful pictures of the royal family at Balmoral over the years. Really a lucky experience for anyone who is going to get to go inside.
Yes, that's correct, you know, and I think I was telling a group of Italian tourists today, you know, it was an anecdote that Jack McConnell, the former First Minister of Scotland, told. One tourist bus had got, two tourists from it had got lost, and the late Queen Elizabeth II, well, she was out tending the garden, but looking, you know, in her headscarf and, you know, unrecognisable as it were, the tourists, well, they asked her, excuse me, what's the way back round to the bus? And the Queen duly pointed them in the right direction, at which point the Queen took off her headscarf, ran through the property and stood at the front gate to wave them off, and the tourists couldn't believe the luck that they had just been speaking to the late Queen. I thought that was one of my favourite stories that has actually happened here on the grounds at Balmoral.
Oh, really, really lovely stuff, and what a privilege for 40 people a day. How do people go about getting these tickets? Asking for a friend, obviously.
Well, I believe that... I actually believe that they're all gone now. You know, let's hope that the touts don't get anywhere near this one. But certainly, yeah, from now until the middle of August, we've seen quite a lot of rather nice-looking cars, we'll have to say. And some people are parking in the public car park, going up in their hunting tartans themselves, certainly dressed to impress up when they get up to the castle. But you know, quite a few rooms, I believe, including the Red Hallway. today, and the library, of course, and various other studies that they're going to get a chance to see today. So I think it's going to be a really special occasion for those who are lucky enough to be going in there today.
Well, it sounds like it would be easier to get a Taylor Swift ticket than in the one to see Balmoral Castle. Tony Maguire, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, he was setting it up. I was very into.
You had hope.
I was ready to, in the next advert break, go and book my ticket. And no, it seems they're all gone. Well,
shame.
Oh well. But still to come in the show, despite being slightly disappointed about our lack of royal access, we'll be joined by a former England player, that'll make up for it, for his take on England's progress in the Euros. It's been far from convincing so far, but can fans keep their dream of glory alive? You're watching Good Afternoon Britain.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
I've got a grade 3 astrocytoma brain tumour. Once I was diagnosed, I tried to do my claim with my insurance company and was rejected. They then also cancelled my life insurance and also cancelled my wife's policies as well.
And this is Zurich Insurance, John.
This is Zurich,
and their point was, because you'd had some dizzy spells, which you hadn't told them about, they say dizzy spells equates to a brain tumour, which there's no evidence to support that.
I was with King's College Hospital. They ignored them. King's College Hospital were the experts.
So you were expecting £25,000?
Yeah, that was a critical illness claim.
Critical illness, because you've got a critical illness. Clearly, it couldn't be more critical, could it?
No.
Michelle, you've got a lovely, poorly husband, and you're also worrying about paying the bills and what the future holds.
Yeah.
What impact is this having on you on a day-to-day basis?
I try not to think too much about the future because it does upset me. I'm kind of thinking, when John does go, I'm left with a mortgage to pay and 2 young children.
How old are your kids?
5 and 3.
Right.
So it's incredibly tough.
And are you working?
I haven't worked since having the children.
Right.
And that's a decision we made when we had children.
In the grand scheme of things, this amount of money is a drop in the ocean for a company like Zurich.
Yeah, because I think they could make all this go away.
I've read some of the statement. Zurich statement, we're sorry to hear of the very difficult circumstances Mr. Rendler's family are experiencing. You're terminally ill, and they're calling that difficult circumstances.
The People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Congratulations to the GB News winners at this year's Trick Awards.
And the winner of Interview of the Year is... Alistair Stewart reveals his heartbreaking diagnosis to Camilla Tormini.
And the winner is GB News Breakfast. And the winner is Nigel Farage.
And thank you to you, our GB News viewers and listeners, for making us the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 23 minutes past 2, and England scraped through to the quarter-finals by the skin of their teeth last night against Slovakia.
Jude Bellingham rescued England right at the death in the 95th minute to take the game to extra time.
Captain Harry Kane headed in early in extra time to quickly dismiss any threat of penalties, which, if I know anything about the England team, was a very, very good thing indeed.
Yes, absolutely. I think... It was tense. It was tense right there at the death. I think I'd given up hope, to be honest, by that point.
Well,
but then Jude Bellingham came swooping in with that amazing bicycle kick that I think is now going to go down in England competition history.
Shall we get the view of someone who's been there on the pitch. We're delighted to be joined now by former England footballer Danny Mills. Danny, I mean, were you as on the edge of your seat as just about half the country was?
Yeah, I was sat there watching it on the phone, actually, with some friends and one a couple of my sons, just sort of hoping and just thinking, you know, obviously just after half-time, there was the disallowed goal from Phil Foden. We thought that was the moment that they get back into it. And then, of course, you know, the longer it goes on, it's like, oh, goodness me, you know, what's going to happen? And then, like you said, you know, Jude Bellingham comes up with an unbelievable goal, you know, last gasp effort, sensational strike that he managed to perform. And suddenly takes it to extra time. And then, you know, within a few seconds, really, of the restart, Harry Kane makes it 2-1. And that's that, you know. Again, not a brilliant performance, but into the hat and into the next round. And, you know, hopefully England now have got all their not brilliant performances out of the way and they can start to build on that again.
So you've got 19 caps yourself for England. What will those players be feeling right now?
They'll be relieved, that is for sure. You know, coming from 1-0 down, you know, leaving it until the very, very last minute, there's a huge amount of relief. The pressure on them to win this tournament is immense. Ever since Gareth took over, you know, he was criticised for not winning his first tournament when we were never, you know, we were never the best team in the world. Then criticised for losing a Euro final on penalties. Criticised last time out for losing to France when Harry Kane missed a penalty. So the expectation is you have to win this tournament. It's win or bust, simple as that. And the players will be feeling that. The players know that. So they're out there, they're doing their best. You know, it's not quite happening at the moment in terms of performances, but we're still in it. So, you know, sometimes the best team, it's not always the teams that play the greatest football, the most entertaining football that win. Winning football can be dull. Winning football can be boring at times. You know, Jose Mourinho, one of the greatest coaches of all times, wasn't the most exciting football.
Do you think there are too many stars? It's going to sound like an odd thing to say, but do we have too many standalone stars in the England team, and therefore the team as a unit doesn't play together as well because these individuals are all trying to be the centre of attention?
No, you've got a good point, and that can often happen. You know, when everyone wants to be the superstar. Everyone's trying maybe a little bit too hard because it isn't quite cohesive at the moment. It's not quite working properly, so everyone's trying to do that a little bit more. Sometimes you have to go back to basics. You know, even in the second game, Harry Kane coming too deep, trying to help out his defence. He doesn't need to do that. You know, he needs to trust the other players within there. Midfield players maybe trying to take on too many players. Let the other players do that. You know, trust in your teammates. Let them do their job. You know, and as you said, you know, the team is about the sum of the parts, how you come together. You can't just throw individuals together. They might be the best individuals in the world, but it's about the team. You know, and now going to face Switzerland, they have to really come together as a team. They're going to have to put in a better performance. Hopefully they overcome that, and all of a sudden, without playing particularly well, you're in a semi-final.
Danny, you said this is either win or bust. Of course, for those players, they'll go off after the Euros and they'll carry on their careers in the Bundesliga, the Premier League, La Liga. They'll carry on. But for your former teammate, Gareth Southgate, it very much is win or bust, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he'll probably step down after this, no matter what. I think, you know, even if he wins, I think he can hold his head up very, very high and just walk around and go, well, can't do much better than that. You know, simple as that. I think we have to put it into some perspective. You know, Gareth gets a lot of criticism at times for not making decisions. But I go back to the Euros last time out where he changed the system against Germany and everybody went, what are you doing? You can't play five at the back against Germany. We're going to get absolutely slaughtered. Oh, no, we won that game. That was quite comfortable. You know, you leave players on last night and when you're looking for a moment in a game, a moment of magic, do you take Harry Kane off, who, give him one chance, he's likely to score? You bring on maybe Ollie Watkins, who realistically, and we've seen this from his England performances, might need 2 or 3 chances to score. So there's always that concern. You're thinking, if we get 1 chance, 2 chances, it's a little bit like when you had Harry Kane and Dele Alli, you know, in that first World Cup. At that time, they were the 2 most prolific goal scorers. You know, their strike rate was phenomenal. Similarly, last night, you leave on Jude Bellingham because you know he's got that moment in him. He did it in the first game, you know, with a header. He's done it for Real Madrid so many times this season. Harry Kane has done it time and time again. So you put faith in players that have been there, seen it, done it. That's what he did. It paid off. He's still getting criticism for not making changes early enough, but you've won the game. So I think we just need to accept performances haven't been great, calm down, and see what the next game brings.
Well, the next game, of course, Switzerland, who, I mean, traditionally not thought of as the best team in the world, but my goodness, they've been having a pretty remarkable contest so far. I mean, do we stand a chance?
Yeah, of course we do. You know, they've been a very good team for some time. You know, their world ranking has been up there or thereabouts. They've got a lot of very good individuals. You know, within that side, and that's been for some time now. We have good individuals. We've got a slight issue. Obviously, Marc Guéhi is suspended, so Gareth's going to have to tweak the defence. Marc Guéhi's been, you know, very, very good so far in this tournament. A couple of moments where, you know, it was heart and mouth time, but got away with it. So there will be personnel change. And I think he's got big decisions to make, you know, and we've said this time and time again. Sometimes, as a manager, you need an injury or something to happen to change the system. You know, a player gets injured and you're not expecting it, or a player suddenly, you know, is suspended and you're forced to change it. And all of a sudden, that change, the player comes in, does really, really well, and it can change an awful lot. So, you know, let's hope for that. We're still in this tournament. We've got to beat Switzerland, who are a very, very good side, to get into a semi-final of the Euros. If you'd have said that at the beginning of the tournament, everybody would have snapped your arm off. So, okay, let's not forget about the bad performances or not brilliant performances, but let's accept we can do better, but we're in it. And let's wait until after the next game. If we go out and we don't play well, then players, managers, staff all deserve criticism. But if they go through again, then, you know, we're into a semi-final.
Well, big decisions, Danny. Let's hope they're the right decisions. That's Danny Mills there, former England international. Thank you so much for joining us. Coming up, the latest from Tenerife as the search for Jay Slater is called off. That's after your headlines with Tamsin.
Sophie, thanks very much. Here are the headlines at 2:31. The Prime Minister says Britain would become the soft touch of Europe on illegal migration under a Labour government. He says flights to Rwanda are an essential deterrent for illegal migrants coming to Britain and warns that other parties have failed to put forward credible alternatives. He also took aim at the Reform UK leader, saying Nigel Farage has not done enough to tackle allegations of racism within his party. Meanwhile, the political parties are appealing to undecided voters in the final days before Thursday's election. Rishi Sunak is urging people not to give Labour a supermajority amid polls giving Sir Keir Starmer a 20-point lead. But the Labour leader says a clear mandate is needed to repair Britain's economy and warns apathy could lead to another 5 years of the Conservatives. Sir Ed Davey says voters should take the plunge and do something they've never done before by voting for the Liberal Democrats. The party's leader took part in a bungee jump as he urged voters to take a similar leap of faith at Thursday's election. In the US, President Biden's family has reportedly urged him not to stand aside, despite pressure from within his party to allow someone else to become a Democratic nominee. It comes after his performance in a televised debate last week, which was widely criticised and reignited concerns over his age. Energy prices will become cheaper from today as the latest price cap takes effect. The energy regulator Ofgem's cap fell by 7% after a drop in wholesale prices. It means that a typical 12-month bill will be around £112 cheaper than they were a year ago, though another rise is expected in October. Well, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tamsin Roberts. More from me at the top of the hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
A very good day to you. Here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Some of us in the south and southeast will cling on to some fine weather today. Elsewhere it is turning pretty cloudy and there will be some rain around in association with a frontal system that is gradually making its way southeastwards. This has already brought quite a bit of rain across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland and is now pushing its way into parts of northern England, later central England and also across parts of Wales as we go through the afternoon. Like I said, across southern southeastern parts, clinging on to some fine weather here. There will be some sunshine around, but turning a bit cloudier as we go through the day. In the sunshine, not feeling too bad. Temperatures just about getting into the low 20s, feeling cooler towards the north-northwest. As we go into this evening and looking at this in a bit more detail, across Scotland, the front will have largely cleared away across these areas, and so it's going to be a little bit clearer at times, some clear spells mixed in, but also perhaps a bit fresh. There could be some strong winds here as well. A bit cloudy across Northern Ireland as we go through the end of the day, but looking largely dry. However, the front is going to be lingering across northern, central parts of England and across Wales, so some thick cloud and some outbreaks of drizzly rain. Clinging on to the fine weather across the southeast through much of the day, but as we go overnight, the cloud and the drizzly rain is going to arrive here, so turning a bit damp through the night across many parts of the southeast and also some eastern parts of England. Further west, some clear skies developing, a few showers, but most places largely dry. It's not going to be a particularly chilly night, temperatures generally holding up, especially across eastern southeastern parts where we have some thicker cloud. Any drizzly rain across parts of eastern southeastern England will gradually clear away as we go through tomorrow. Otherwise, it's looking like a mostly dry day for many places, a few showers to watch out for, but also some bright sunny spells, and then some more persistent showery rain starts to push its way in to the far northwest as we go through later on. Temperatures will be similar to today, but feeling a bit cooler where the cloud lingers in the southeast.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. South Lanarkshire still seeing queues on the southbound M74 this afternoon. Just one lane open from Lark Hall down to Canderside. That's junction 728. There's a queue back towards Wraith at junction 5 that takes about half an hour to get through this ongoing emergency repairs. Starting to improve west into Wales for the M4, heading on towards the Prince of Wales Bridge. All lanes open, slightly slow following an earlier lane closure. M5 in Somerset still very heavy either side of Bridgewater, junction 24 to 23. The earlier police incidents cleared, but still queuing in patches in both directions. Anti-clock M25 struggling just at Enfield 25, though the earlier breakdown's gone. And the southbound M3 at Camberley Junction 4, the exit slip they're coming off is partially blocked, all due to a collision. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 36 minutes past 2.
Martin Daubney is up next and he joins us now. Martin, what's coming up on your show today?
Well, continuing the theme of The Great Escape, Gareth Southgate needs to buy some lottery tickets. He's the luckiest bloke on the entire planet, seconds from death row, and yet still the three Lions limp on. Can they continue, or is the end of the line for them? Plus, have the Tories simply given up? 4,000 illegal migrants now crossed the Channel since Rishi Sunak declared the national general election, and still all they talk about is supermajorities, blank cheques and decades of Labour power. Plus, an astonishing report today shows thousands of killers, violent criminals and rapists in prisons are entitled to benefits. They're allowed to get universal credit in a law that's been called inhumane. I'll be joined by a campaigner whose father was stabbed by a psychotic patient who says this is simply inhumane and must stop. Plus, are you a Nigel, a Kevin, a Gary or even a Martin? Well, if so, your name could be on an endangered species list. I'll look at the names that are dying out and also the names that are coming through, which paints a picture of a very, very changing Britain. All that, 3 till 6.
Goodness me. Well, Martin, it sounds a jam-packed show. I just have to say, though, where's your patriotism? The three Lions limp on. Where's the positivity?
I'll tell you what, I've been saying for weeks and weeks and weeks, as you well know, Tom, every morning in conference, Southgate should get the sack. One last-minute miracle does not change that. We need a fresh start. History has changed in the spin of a coin, but I tell you what, I was right all along. He's no good for the team. Let's get rid of him.
Goodness me, strong stuff there, Martin. From 3 o'clock, look forward to it.
Thank you, Martin. Jay Slater's family are to meet with Spanish police today after they called off the search for the Lancashire teenager in a mountainous area of Tenerife.
Well, the family say they will continue to look themselves after being left disappointed by a call for volunteers, which saw just 6 people turn out to look for the teenager over the weekend.
Well, joining us now is travel writer Joe Crawley, who's out in Tenerife. Joe, a bit of a shock yesterday when they called off that search, and I can imagine quite upsetting for the family.
It was a surprise. It seemed to come from nowhere. The population of Tenerife seems pretty shocked that it's being called off after 2 weeks. I guess the Saturday search with the extra people was a final push as far as the police were concerned. But yeah, it's taken everybody by surprise.
It's interesting to sort of learn about that number, 6. Just 6 people who volunteered to take part in this search. Is it really as big a story in Tenerife as it is in the UK? Because, I mean, numbers like that would suggest that perhaps the population of Tenerife isn't as transfixed as we are back in Blighty.
Well, I think there's 2 things to consider. The first is that the call for volunteers was the call for professional volunteers or experts in mountain rescue, mountain climbing, expert hikers. It wasn't really a call to the general public. So maybe there were a limited number of people here of that ilk at the time. But also, I've been talking to some Spanish people, some young Spanish people, the Canarians, and a lot of the Spanish population are not aware of this case. Amongst the British expat community, yeah, it's the talk of the town and a lot of concern. But some of the Canarians that I've been speaking to said, Jay, who? And then followed up by, well, a lot of people get lost in the mountains.
Joe, it is a shocking one, and I think the question remains, doesn't it? Where is Jay Slater then? If they're calling off the search, what other lines of inquiry could the police be taking in?
Well, as everybody knows, there's been a lot of speculation. There are a lot of theories, obviously. The police over here do not give very much away publicly. That's just not the way that they do things. So they said that the case is actually open. The investigation is still ongoing, but obviously the search is finished. I don't know where we'll get the next update from. The family are going to continue. I think the detective Mark Williams-Thomas, the ex-detective Mark Williams-Thomas is over here at the moment. But yeah, I'm not sure which particular lines of inquiry the Guardia Civil here are following now.
Well, Joe Crawley, thank you very much for joining us live from Tenerife for more on that story. Let's dive deeper now with our reporter, Charlie Peters. You've been following this story since day one. This is a curious turn from the police.
It is curious, but it does suggest that there is a parallel investigation going on here. The search is over, but the investigation continues. And perhaps it's understandable why they wanted one final public push in that area on the Saturday before they called off the physical search, because it's been going on for 2 weeks. Those civil guard units in that area, they no doubt have exhausted that terrain, and it's no wonder it's taken 2 weeks due to the difficult, rocky, quite unforgiving nature of that area in the northwest of the island. They've had helicopters, sniffer dogs reinforced from Madrid, and so many units of the Civil Guard conducting this operation. They've not given much away, as Joe Crawley just told us there from the island, but that's the nature of southern European police forces, particularly those with a military ethos, as the Civil Guard does have. It's similar to the Carabinieri in Italy or the Gendarmerie in France. They have that separate military structure, quite different from, say, British police, where, of course, in this sort of scenario, if this occurred in the moors, for example, you'd expect a family liaison officer and regular press conferences, some every day, possibly twice a day. That's what we're treated to here. But over in Tenerife, there has been that different approach. Tom, we've discussed it before, calling it opaque, but they're not giving anything away, leading rise to some speculation. I think at this point, they almost certainly have a favourite theory, a line of inquiry they're pursuing more popularly than the others. The question that we need to answer is, what is it? What are they looking at now? If the search is over, but the investigation is open, what other lines of inquiry are they pursuing? When people on the island have been discussing this, in particular third-party investigators brought in by the family, they've made reference to a criminal underworld in Tenerife, and there has also been some discussion potentially about Jay Slater being held against his will. Journalists on the island covering it have said that that is being something they've discussed when looking into this operation. But the search is closed. He's almost certainly not in that area with all the capabilities that the Civil Guard have.
It's been 2 weeks now. The family are out there. Debbie, his mother, flew out the day after he first disappeared. She's been joined now by friends, by Jay's father and his brother. For the family, I can imagine that this is an incredibly difficult time, especially that line yesterday coming out that the search has finished.
There must be turmoil, complete turmoil. And I know that they've said publicly that they aren't appreciating this move to end the search. And you can imagine that it's the last thing you ever want to hear as a family, that the physical search for, your relative's body is no longer being conducted. But they are still having that investigation open. There still will be police inquiries taking place, and it's clear they've put significant resources into this. What those next steps will be, perhaps we'll learn more this week about what other lines of inquiry they're pursuing. Before, we've been able to track it because it's been visible. When the Civil Guard have looked at another area, we've seen them move there, often in those significant convoys and their helicopters and their drones, and indeed those sniffer dogs reinforced from the mainland. Now, their operation will be less obvious, and details for what they're doing will have to come from journalists pressing them for more information on the ground. So, will the criminal underworld in Tenerife be included? Will new properties be searched across the island? Or will it be an information barren space? Will it return to just the Civil Guard looking into it without getting much information on the ground?
Criminal underworld really raises a huge number of questions about whether this was... What element of that criminal underworld has been involved here? Of course, it's easy to let your imagination run wild when it comes down to it. Is it really that likely that we're talking about a hostage situation?
Well, usually in cases of ransom, you'd hear something by now, wouldn't you? So it is something that people would get very concerned by. That's the sort of information you'd wait for the police to give a statement on. But when it comes to this sort of operation, the Civil Guard will need to detail what else they're looking into with this work. The search is over. It's clear they're looking into something.
Charlie Peters, thank you so much for joining us. Still to come, will he or won't he? The question over whether Andy Murray will compete at this year's Wimbledon. We'll get an update. You're watching Good Afternoon Britain.
This election night, we're putting on a party.
And you are invited.
We'll be here with you.
Following all the twists and turns.
As well as all the live reaction from our election night watch party.
With our GB News lineup.
And as morning breaks, we'll be here with breakfast from 6 a.m.
As it becomes clear who the winners and the losers really are.
Vote 2024.
Thursday, the 4th of July.
Only on GB News.
Britain's election channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Giovanni is axed following growing allegations of threatening and abusive behaviour.
We won't see his little toes dancing around the dance floor again, which is a shame.
Was it the BBC saying, you know, we've had some bad publicity about this star, do we need to maybe let him go? Or was it Giovanni himself saying that, you know, he's had to, with all the bad publicity and what's the allegations against him, he's walked away? We don't exactly know. But what we do know is that Amanda Abingdon, who he was coupled with last year on the last series of Strictly, left claiming that she had nasty behaviour from him in rehearsals when they were training for their routines. And she's also been diagnosed with PTSD, which she is blaming or claiming happened because of the training that she was put under Giovanni. It's very sad because I've met Giovanni on quite a few occasions, and he comes across as a very nice gentleman, actually, and the fans absolutely love him. And even though the allegations are out there against him, everybody I speak to in terms of the fans are on his side.
I mean, from the fans' point of view, they don't see what goes on behind the scenes. All they see is an incredibly gifted dancer who we're seeing footage of now.
It might come out later, but there's all sorts of things coming out because after Amanda came out and claimed all this behaviour against him, a male celebrity last week also came out and voiced their opinion. Yeah, a lot of fans will be gutted, but as you say, we don't know the full story yet as what's gone on.
And it's incredible pressure that no one's allowed to be, a duffer right from the start now.
I mean, it's one thing learning lines if you're an actor, but it's a different kettle of fish altogether if you're learning moves that you've never done before. So you've got...
The People's Channel.
This election night, we're putting on a party.
And you are invited.
We'll be here with you.
Following all the twists and turns.
As well as all the live reaction from our election night watch party.
With our GB News lineup.
And as morning breaks, we'll be here with breakfast from 6 a.m.
As it becomes clear who the winners and the losers really are.
Vote 2024.
Thursday, the 4th of July.
Only on GB News.
Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 10 minutes to 3. Now, to SW19, where tennis fans have queued overnight for the first day of the Wimbledon Championships.
One thing they'll be hoping for is good news on Andy Murray's fitness. Can the former champion grace the centre court for one last time?
Well, joining us now is our national reporter, Theo Chakomba. And Theo, any news on the crowd favourite, Andy Murray?
Well, the news at the moment from the two-time former champion Andy Murray is that they are assessing his current health state at the moment. We know that he had a medical operation 9 days ago on his back, and he's put out a statement alongside his family saying they are going over the details at the moment and will be giving an update today. So we could see him here at Wimbledon, maybe for the final time tomorrow, when he's due to take part in a singles match. So that is something we are looking forward to, and of course many fans who have travelled from around the UK and around the world will of course want to see him as well, alongside some of those other big names such as Alcaraz and many more who we've seen coming here and performing quite well in the last couple of months in other tournaments as well. But outside here, just outside centre court, we've seen a number of protesters in the last couple of hours here outside centre court, court 1, and also outside gates 3 and 5 as well. And these have been protesting since the early hours of this morning, saying that Wimbledon should drop Barclays as their sponsor due to their relationship with 9 defence companies who are supplying arms to Israel. Now, in terms of Barclays themselves, they have put out a statement putting out a statement regarding this criticism and saying we have been asked why we invest in 9 defence companies supplying Israel, but this mistakes what we do in their statement. And then we've also heard from the All England Club, who are the ones who run Wimbledon. They were saying our ambition is to have a positive impact on the environment, and it is core, a part of putting on a successful championships. We know this is one of the defining challenges of our time, and we are fully committed to playing their part. So 2 things here really, as thousands of fans have been coming here to Wimbledon. We've had the protesters outside, but also many people coming here potentially to see the likes of Sir Andy Murray in the next couple of days. But so far, it's been a peaceful day here outside Wimbledon.
Theo, just to ask, what have people there been saying? Is there a real sense of excitement in the air?
There is, yes. Just a few moments ago, we were speaking to some who have travelled all the way from America to celebrate their 20th wedding anniversary, and many more we've spoken throughout the day. Many people are excited, and they're hoping that they can see some of those superstars in the flesh play some of their best tennis here in southwest London.
Oh, brilliant stuff. Well, Theo Chikomba, thank you very much for joining us live from Wimbledon. Lovely. Well, my goodness me. We've come to the end of the show, but that doesn't mean that it's the end of the news. Far from it. Of course, Martin Daubney will be up next. I just want to say, Sophie Reaper. Sophie, been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much.
While Emily's been away, yes, it's
been a pleasure joining you, Tom.
Good.
To fill this seat while Emily was off getting married. Really good. Really good to join you.
Absolutely. And, of course, our heartfelt best wishes from everyone at GB News to the new happy couple, Patrick Christys and now not Emily Carver, but Emily Christys, although I think she'll still be Emily Carver on this programme. But that's it for us today. Of course, Martin Daubney's up next. Don't go anywhere. Stick around.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again. Here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There will be some dry and at times sunny weather around as we go into tomorrow, but there's also going to be quite a bit of cloud for some of us and some outbreaks of rain, all due to a frontal system that is marching its way southeastwards currently. That's already brought a bit of rain across northern parts and will continue to bring some rain across many parts of England and Wales as we go through the rest of today. In the southeast, clinging onto the dry weather well into the overnight period, but then things are going to turn a bit cloudy and a bit damp here as we go through the night. Further west, some clear skies are going to develop overnight, but temperatures not dropping a huge amount. Most places holding up in double digits, particularly mild towards the east of England where we have that thicker cloud. So in the east and southeast, it is going to be a bit of a grey, damp start to the day tomorrow. If we take a closer look, and you can see some drizzly rain around, nothing particularly heavy here. Further west, a brighter picture, some sunny spells, a few showers perhaps for North Wales and northwest England. Mostly dry for Northern Ireland and much of northeastern England and eastern Scotland, but further west over western parts of Scotland, some fairly frequent showery rain quite likely here, perhaps the odd heavier burst, and some slightly blustery winds here, whilst elsewhere the winds don't look particularly strong. As we go through the day itself tomorrow, that rain cloud in the southeast will clear away and so turning drier here, but otherwise some bright sunny spells for most of us, a bit brighter, sunnier than today generally. However, towards the northwest of the UK, some more persistent showery rain will push its way in and a few showers are possible elsewhere. Temperatures similar to today, but in the southeast where we cling on to a bit more cloud, it may feel a little bit cooler. More rain piling its way in across northern parts as we go through tomorrow evening. Further south though, staying dry as we go through the end of the day. There could even be some late sunshine around. As we go through the rest of the week, some more changeable weather to come, particularly on Wednesday and Friday, and temperatures generally around or a little bit below average.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our summer treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest cash prize of the year so far. With an extra £30,000 in your bank account this year, you could take the ultimate financial holiday and send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could get you those nagging home improvements done, buy that brand new car, or just enable you to kick back and relax for the rest of the year. For a chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to